All opinions and quotations in no way represent River West Radio and are the sole responsibility of the producer, guests, and callers. River West Radio is not liable for any legal issues arising from the content of this program.
You are obsolete, Mr. Wordsworth. You have no function, Mr. Wordsworth. You're an anachronism, like a ghost from another time.
I am nothing more than a reminder to you that you cannot destroy truth.
You're a bug, Mr. Wordsworth, a crawling insect, an ugly, misformed little creature who has no purpose here, no meaning.
I am a human being. I exist. And if I speak one thought out loud, that thought exists, even after I'm shoveled into my grave.
Illusions, Mr. Wordsworth. Illusions, the Bible, poetry, essays of all kinds, all of it an opiate to make you think you have a strength when you have no strength at all. You have nothing but spindly limbs and a dream, and the state has no use for your kind.
Yeah? Well, we're gonna have to do something about that. This is RiverWestRadio.com, community-supported radio streaming live from Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I'm your host. My name is Michael Wordsworth, and welcome to Breaking Down the News, the show that presents the news highlights of the week, but with a twist. Breaking Down the News is more concerned in bringing you information that wasn't covered on the front pages. Headlines you don't want to miss, because not listening could be dangerous to your freedom, liberty, and health.
And thank you for joining us. It is Friday, October 5th, 2012. I am Michael Wordsworth. Wow, what an incredible time, what an incredible era we live in. Did you watch the presidential debate on Wednesday night? Anybody out there? I saw a lot of people in the bars. They had Romney and Obama and Oromna up there. Because what's the difference? It is absolutely amazing how they can have an hour and a half debate about the economy and say so little. It seemed like both candidates were falling off, just falling all over each other, wanting to talk about how much they value education, but will more education really solve our problems? After all, 53% of all Americans with a bachelor's degree under the age of 25 were either unemployed or underemployed in 2011. So perhaps they should just both agree that education is a good thing and start talking about how to create more jobs for all of us. If you want to grade the debate from a technical standpoint, clearly Romney was the winner of the debate. Romney was full of energy and was generally sharp with his answers. Obama looked like he just popped a couple of antidepressants and was ready for a nap. Well, as a result, this might have been the worst blowout in the history of presidential debates. A CNN ORC in an international poll that was taken right after the debate found that 67% of all Americans that had watched the debate thought that Romney was the winner. Never before had any presidential candidate crossed the 60% mark in the history of their post-debate polling. So Romney definitely had a big night, but the reality is that both candidates were telling the American people what they want to hear. If either Obama, I can't help it, Obama and Romney, it's quite frankly, it's Obama and Oromna, because I'm telling you, it's going to be the same outcome whoever gets into office. And I know a lot of people would have an opinion on both Democratic and Republican sides. They would both say, no, there's clearly a difference. Honestly, I see the same events happening regardless of who gets in there. The question just becomes, do you want Coke or Pepsi on the outside of your can while you're drinking cola? It's the same thing. We are going to experience the same events. I'll talk about that more later in the show, but if either Obama or Romney told the truth about what we were facing, the stuff that I'm telling you that we'll talk about later, we would lose votes. And in a race this tight, both of them really want to avoid doing that. Obama and Romney both desperately want to win this election, and the words that are coming out of their mouths have been like the words coming out of my mouth. I tell you, it's I'm just just chock full of thoughts as I'm considering this whole debate and really what we're facing. But bear with me, and we're going to get through this because there is so much to talk about. I just wanted to touch on this debate a little bit. Okay, Obama and Romney both desperately want to win this election. That's a given. And the words that are coming out of their mouths have been carefully crafted to appeal to the undecided voters in the swing states. If you actually believe that they can deliver on everything that they are promising, then you must not have been paying much attention to U.S. politics over the past several decades. Perhaps the biggest failure on Wednesday night was debate moderator Jim Lehrer of PBS. His questions were about as far from hard-hitting as you could get. The hour-and-a-half debate was almost entirely about the economy, and yet almost all of the critical issues were ignored. We're going to go over them. Caitlin Redding just made it into the studio. She's getting set up here. Pardon? And we have a guest. Who's the guest coming in?
Well, the guest happens to be Zav LaPlay.
Is who?
Zav LaPlay.
Okay, not our Zav.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, well.
You have an exciting story.
Indeed, we have the master of words himself, the wordsmith master Zav coming on. This is I did not know that. He did not inform me. Well, it'll be truly an honor and a pleasure. Let me cut to a commercial. As you know, we don't actually play commercials here. We play anti-commercials. That's why they're worth listening to. They're designed to deprogram you. And isn't that a switch? It's not commercial programming. It's commercial deprogramming. I'm Michael Wordsworth, Caitlin Redding. This is actually with Caitlin Redding, who's getting set up here. And you're listening to Breaking Down the News on this October 5th, 2012 edition. We'll be right back.
You're listening to RiverWestRadio.com.
Experiments have shown that less than 1 minute after the viewer begins to watch television, the brain switches from beta-level consciousness, associated with active and logical thought, to alpha level, which is associated with passive acceptance and suggestibility. This is why advertisers spend billions of dollars a year on commercials, as well as product placement within TV shows. Political messages are implanted in fictional TV programs as the relaxed, meditative state of the viewer is receptive to the programming.
You're listening to RiverWestRadio.com.
The following program is brought to you in living color.
This is Breaking Down the News, bringing you headlines that should have made the front pages. Streaming live Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, 3:30 p.m. Central Standard.
Okay, yes, Obama and Romney have slight differences when it comes to tax rates and regulations, but those small differences are not going to do much to change the direction of this country one way or another. That's not an opinion. That's actually a calculated guess. That's right. It's a step up from an opinion because, quite frankly, I mean, it's like when you're watching a snowball roll down a hill and it starts to gain more snow. It's not like an opinion that you say, well, eventually that thing's going to get really big and hit the bottom of the hill. And I guess that's the standpoint we're looking at. Let's go over these issues. In an hour-and-a-half debate about the economy, the Federal Reserve was not mentioned a single time. And what quite frankly affects us, our monetary policy and the regulation of it more than the Federal Reserve. I mean, we're talking about politics in America on the fringe issues, that not the core issues. I'd like to point out I have a bunch of core issues to go over here. In an hour-and-a-half debate about the economy, Ben Bernanke was not mentioned a single time. I mean, no discussion of how are we going to move with federal policy and monetary policy in this country. We talked about budgets, and budgets are a fringe issue. We didn't talk about derivatives. We didn't talk about spending $40 billion a month on buying up mortgage-backed securities. What? They don't want to tell you about that. Maybe we shouldn't make an issue out of that. In that entire debate about the economy, quantitative easing wasn't mentioned. quantitative easing, the next round, that $40 billion. They also didn't talk about derivatives. The term derivatives was not used once. Considering the fact that derivatives could bring down our financial system at any moment, this is an issue that should have been talked about. We're going on with what was not talked about in this debate and what should be discussed across the country. In that debate last Wednesday, there was no mention of the millions of jobs that have been shipped out of the country, considering the fact that both Obama and Romney have played a role in this. It's probably a topic they want to avoid. Overall, I mean, actually, there was, I remember a little bit was touched on about that, and just a teeny tiny bit, actually. I forgot what it was Romney was saying to Obama. I wish I had that video clip right now. That would be awesome. But the fact that the jobs are being shipped not only out of the country, but they're being shipped to a country, China, where there are no EPA regulations or labor rights. So we cannot compete with slave labor, and that's what it amounts to. China's running a slave labor sweatshop, and very few of their people are actually getting the proper cut. The rest are poor slaves. And we cannot compete with that because nobody can compete with slave labor. Slavery is supposed to be outlawed. I thought we lived in an era where we do not tolerate slavery anymore. Well, that's not the case. Not anymore. Overall, the United States has lost more than 56,000 manufacturing facilities since 2001. I'm not talking jobs, 56,000 manufacturing facilities. That's a tremendous leakage draining out of here. Going over the issues that were not discussed in the debate last Wednesday, neither candidate mentioned that the velocity of money has plunged to a post-World War II low. The fact that the rest of the world is beginning to reject the U.S. dollar as a reserve currency was not mentioned a single time, but this has an enormous implication for our economy in the years ahead. The fact that the Social Security system is headed for massive trouble was only briefly touched on during the debate. At that moment, there are approximately 56 million Americans that are collecting Social Security benefits. By 2035, that number is projected to grow to an astounding 91 million. Overall, the Social Security system is facing a $134 trillion shortfall over the next 75 years. When are they honestly going to address this massive problem? Seriously. In an hour-and-a-half debate about the economy, the nightmarish drought the country is experiencing right now wasn't mentioned. I mean, that's definitely something that it's a national emergency. At least it's been declared that. Also, in the debate, the financial meltdown in Europe was basically totally ignored. But considering the fact that Europe has a larger economy and a much larger banking system than we do, perhaps someone should have asked Obama and Romney what they plan to do when the financial system of Europe implodes. It's a good question, isn't it? They talked about the economy, but the student loan bubble, which is essentially a debt bubble, was only briefly mentioned. I mean, they've got over $1 trillion in student loan debts out there. Going to be very hard to pay that back when you don't have a job. And I'd be sorry for it, but it ain't even my fault. But I just empathize with the people out there in this predicament. But that's why we need to pay attention to the real issues, not our Packer game. The Packer game is not going to affect your job and housing market. That's a thing you do on the side. You don't make that an issue. And then watch this debate, this contrivance. I mean, let's go. I just want to get through all the things that they did not discuss real quick before we move on to other topics, and including our guest, Zav, coming in talking about the Hacktivism movie that he actually sponsored, I guess, right?
Yes, he did.
Okay, here, let me...
Do a level check. Yes, and actually, it's not just about the Milwaukee Film Festival that we wish to address. We want to talk about how this is a new form of political activism, I guess, hacktivism, and the fact that these people are doing things that we weren't even aware of. And I was astounded by what I learned in the documentary. One of the things that Zab and I will talk about is the fact that somehow these people worldwide were the ones that were able to set up a network to allow people in Egypt, Iran, Syria, and other nations to communicate with the outside world. The president of Egypt actually had completely blackened the country, had cut off all cell, all computer.
You talk about Mubarak?
I believe so.
The overthrown president
before
or the new
he stepped down. Before he stepped down, he did this, and it was through the efforts of these people that they were able to open up avenues for those who wish to get online and to get out and to get the pictures out and the news out and the live feed to us.
And to be clear here, we're not talking about when hacktivists have been known to hack into FBI computers or things like that. We're talking about actually using their skills to make the internet available to people in a that is fascinating. We're going to talk about that at length. I just want to finish up these, just a couple of things that were not discussed in the debate. I wouldn't even be discussing the debate except that it happened. It is important in the sense that we need to talk about real issues, but quite frankly, they avoided all the real issues very well at that last debate. And the fact that the American people obviously don't know what questions to ask reflected in that overall poll, opinion polls. They're debating what? What are we debating? Coke or Pepsi? Which one do you want in office? Well, in an hour-and-a-half debate about the economy, there was no mention of TARP, which both Obama and Romney supported the TARP, the Troubled Asset Relief Program bailout. Would they both bail out the banks if another financial crisis erupted? Well, they are actually to the tune of $40 billion a month. It's going right now to the banks. There's a credit freeze, very hard to get money because they can't raise interest rates because, that would cause all sorts of problems. Let me keep rolling here. In the last debate, neither candidate talked about the fact that most of the jobs our economy is producing now are low-income jobs. In fact, since the end of the last recession, 58% of the jobs that have been created are low-paying jobs. It's say like 24% of them are worth a damn. And the rest are just, so basically 24% of the working force that is employed has a job worth some means and measure. The rest of us are like putting together Kinko's, Pick and Save, and Walmart 3 shifts just to make ends meet. Neither candidate mentioned that more than 100 million Americans are enrolled in at least one welfare program run by the federal government, or that more than half of all Americans are now at least partially financially dependent on the government. I can't blame Romney for avoiding this point, though. He probably wanted to avoid the phrase 47% at all costs. Is this really the best that America can do? Tens of millions of Americans tuned in hoping to become more informed about the candidates, and instead what they got was an hour and a half of tap dancing as Obama and Romney constantly tossed out buzzwords such as education, energy independent, middle class, energy independent. I honestly don't know how you can possibly have a debate about the economy without talking about the Federal Reserve, quantitative easing, the trade deficit, Europe, or the decline of the U.S. dollar, but it just happened right in front of our eyes. I don't think I can ever remember another presidential debate that lacked substance as much as this last one did. I'm Michael Wordsworth with Wordsworth Listening To. When we come back, we're going to read a little bit more news and then get Zav on the air. All right, we'll be right back.
You're listening to RiverWestRadio.com.
When you start talking about manipulating the environment, we have treaties that go back to the mid-'70s that forbid this, number one, as weapons of war.
So the perfection of weather modification took place, but it became apparent that using weather modification for wartime purposes was not acceptable to the United States government and other nations of the world. So therefore, the NMOD Treaty came into being and was signed by the United States government after passing Congress. The reason it was signed and implemented was because it would ban warfare, weather modification techniques and use during times of war.
Almost all of our treaties that we've signed, including the non-proliferation, counter-proliferation treaties, chemical treaties, the ones that were signed recently, last few years, back maybe a decade now, I guess time goes. But they had domestic exemptions, and so does the environmental treaty, where you can do whatever you want in your own territorial boundaries. When you start manipulating weather in one part of the planet, it doesn't look on the ground and say, oh yeah, wait, this is the boundary of a political boundary. It fails to recognize those. So you start to talk about geophysics and manipulating the planet itself. Then it's a question of those kinds of exemptions shouldn't even be allowed.
Meteorology and the military have a very long history, as I said, and it goes into the strategic advantage that multiplies your traditional force, that is your armament, into using nature to your advantage as well.
The following program is brought to you in living color.
This is Breaking Down the News, bringing you headlines that should have made the front pages. Streaming live Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, 3:30 p.m. Central Standard.
And we're back. Here's a naval update. T-minus 1 week until Arabian Sea destination reached. This article from Zero Hedge. The news surrounding the Middle East, particularly Iran and Syria, may come and go in waves, but for the most part it is loud political grandstanding, jawboning, and largely noise. Or rather, it will be noise until these two cataclysmic events, the third U.S. aircraft carrier, the CVN-74 Stennis, and the second big deck amphibious warship, which is known as the LH-5 Peleliu. Both were dispatched as of several weeks ago with the destination, the 5th U.S. Fleet headquarters in Bahrain, reached their target, the Arabian Sea, located by the Straits of Hormuz, and right next to, guess where? Iran. As the following naval update map from Stratford shows, both are now within a week of reaching their destination, conveniently so, with at least 2 weeks to go until the presidential election. Needless to say, once on location, the naval and airborne support for any offensive operation, especially those launched during new moon cycles, will be simply suffocating. I'm Michael Wordsworth. We got Caitlin Redding. Caitlin, how's your news coming up there?
Well, very slowly, but it's coming.
Cool. Let me.
I could just talk off the cuff about West Nile, which was back in the news again.
Oh, go ahead. Yeah.
My goodness, they're calling it a emergency, which is amazing. Actually, I was catching a few minutes of a program called The Doctors, which is very popular with a lot of people who watch late afternoon, daytime. It's kind of a spin-off from one of Oprah Winfrey's networks. Anyway, they were talking about the fact that this is now, West Nile virus has been found in all 48 of the continental United States. The top 7, and these states kind of surprised me, Michigan, South Dakota, 2 of the highest of the 7 with West Nile cases that I don't quite understand. That the others are totally understandable: California, Texas, Florida, Arizona, New Mexico. But basically, what they're saying is that the mosquitoes are biting infected birds. So now all of a sudden, the birds have the infection, and the mosquitoes are biting the birds, and then the mosquitoes are biting us. So I thought
so the birds have the infection.
They're claiming, yes.
Okay, and how many, did they give how many people per state?
They refused to put any of those types of graphics up, and they were quoting numbers like, this is a 60% increase in cases. And if I recall, you and I were reading some articles on West Nile, speaking of, was it the mayor of New York City spraying Manhattan from West Nile? That we were doing a little bit of ridiculing then, but basically this has become an epidemic. Nobody's giving numbers. The numbers that we found were 30 cases or something. It was just astounding. So 60% increase in cases would put it still under 100. It's just crazy. So they're telling people to avoid dusk and dawn hours, get rid of standing water, wear light-colored clothing. Next thing they know, we're going to be not allowed to feed the birds, and it's just insane. They're making an absolute emergency state out of something that's really a non-issue. And they did quote, though, the statistics: 30,000 people die from complications of the regular flu every year. And they were saying that the West Nile numbers were much lower than that. But again, they're not giving us numbers.
Much lower.
Well, not even, like much times 5 lower, because I don't even think we're looking at cases in the hundreds. I think we've barely cleared the hundreds in the continental United States.
And the whole United States.
In the whole continental United States. I don't know what's going on in Hawaii.
And the result has been that you've got uninformed citizens out there getting bit by mosquitoes and calling 911 because they're freaking out. No, that's a true story.
I'm sure it is.
I'm not even making that one up.
And their advice against wearing light clothing and not going out in the morning and the afternoon. Well,
it's
that's
fear. Nothing but fear-mongering. You pointed out the swine flu thing. The CDC always reports 37,000 cases of flu deaths a year. But those figures have never been fully confirmed, at least not that I know of.
No.
And you're going to get elderly people or people with weakened immune systems already in critical condition from like a post-op surgery or something.
Exactly.
It's amazing. I'm glad you picked up on that because I didn't even notice the West Nile situation. I was covering the presidential debate,
right.
And I was just kind of looking at. It's amazing. I was going over just basically the geopolitical situation in the Middle East. You got Turkey saying that Syria attacked them, and they're calling for a no-fly zone, and you got Al-Qaeda forces just openly being promoted and funded by the United States to attack Syria, Turkey, and then blame it on everybody, blame it on Bashar al-Assad, the Syrian government. That was pretty heavy. I mean, it really was. I noticed you guys reported, listening to the last Friday's show, you guys reported on Russia banning the GM corn imports.
Oh, that's wonderful news, isn't it? Now, I don't know when the vote is coming up for Proposition 37, but that's going to be really big for all of us if that goes through.
Yeah, we'll definitely stay on top of that one. That is, Whole Foods made the news a lot this weekend, actually, or this week. They were caught censoring the video on YouTube that pertained to...
Really?
What it is, some customers went in there and caught the employees lying, saying that they don't have GMO foods, when it was confirmed that they do have GMO foods in Whole Foods, posing as organic. You can't do that. And...
well, yes, you can. Because remember, organic only refers to the way it's grown in the soil. It does not refer to the seed stock, and that's where they're fooling people.
Is that what it's come down to?
Exactly
I thought
the technicality.
It could not be GMO if you were claiming organic by the USDA.
You would think so, but the definitions do not support that.
That makes sense, though. I mean, why? Right, because it's a loophole for them to...
Absolutely.
So the joke is you're eating organic, but it's GMO. And why is this so significant? Well, I love it. Russia, they're starting a new reality TV show. It should be on air, and I should get everybody that link, actually, because, in fact, let me see if I can bring up that link. It's very important. They're doing a reality TV show featuring live rats eating GMO foods, and you can watch the tumors grow online, live video feed. Just in case you were wondering what GMO foods does to people, well, check out the rats. And believe me, a rat's biology is not that different from a human's biology, that we would not be affected by these cancer-causing tumors. That so let me see if I can get that, because I really... Russia, they banned all imports of genetically modified corn because of recent concerns from a study done by French researchers showing rats grew massive cancer tumors when fed a lifetime of Monsanto's genetically modified corn. And let me see.
It wasn't just the corn, though. We discussed this last Friday. They were also given trace amounts of Roundup or gypsophosphate in their water. So they were drinking and eating the products that were, introduced in the water, and it's the same product that they've got in the plant. It's the geophosphate. It's Roundup. So you double doses, basically.
Which is also tied to the bees.
Exactly.
And the colony collapse syndrome.
Roundup kills bees, and if it's genetically spliced, actually it's not even genetically spliced. It is included in the information so that the plant will not reject it. It's as Charlie described, it's put in an envelope. Nicotine is the envelope. That's the delivery system of the payload, and the payload is the Roundup, and they are now able to get it cross that barrier and get it into the plant, so the plant recognizes it as either A, neutral substance, or B, water. So what happens is it's already in the plant and circulating in the plant, and the bee comes along to drink the nectar, and he gets poisoned because the Roundup is in the nectar. It's in every cell of the plant. It's astounding. It's frightening. It's not even Frankenstein. It's like cyber Frankenstein.
Out of all the crimes that have been committed, you know, I mean, these guys are openly destroying the human food supply and causing untold damage to the bees.
Us. They're killing us.
Us. And, well, you kill the bees, and essentially you just eliminated how much of our crop?
5 years, they say. Charlie quoted 5 years. Once the bees are gone, all your pollinators are gone, the human race will be dead in 5 years.
That sounds like an important issue. I wish the presidential debate would have covered that. Mr. President, what about Roundup killing the bees?
Yeah.
Mr. President, what about Monsanto just running rampant, forcing the GMO crops on farmers, and farmers committing suicide in India because they can't afford to grow anymore, and their crops were all... I mean, it goes on and on, the atrocities that this one company... Was Monsanto mentioned in the debate last Wednesday? Absolutely not. I mean, seriously.
Prop 37 wasn't mentioned.
Oh, and that's a huge. I mean,
it's huge. It is huge. But of course, they don't want to touch anything that's politically hot.
I mean, I would have loved to heard somebody say, Mr. President, there's been a lot of concern recently over genetically modified foods, and the recent bill, Proposition 37, to end the indiscriminate distribution of these foods, which are known to cause cancer and kill untold millions, including bees. Is there? How do you feel about Proposition 37, which is just asking that we at least label the food with a warning saying GMO contains GMO ingredients? How would you address that, Mr. President? That's not even an issue in our book.
And if my parents were Mexican...
Middle class, budget deficit, I'll cut the budget. You know, it's crazy. It's kind of like they talk about how Social Security is going to be ending in 2033. Folks, that is just to give you a false sense that we'll even be here in 2033. You're lucky if you'll make it through the next 33 months with a Social Security system, without a doubt. 33 months, that's it. I mean, at some point, this government's going to declare itself insolvent. And, I don't even want to go into what's going to happen on that day. Caitlin, did you have... I was going to cut to a commercial break, but, I mean, if you have anything...
I can wrap us up with something absolutely absurd.
Sure.
People aren't focusing so much on the presidential campaign and who's ahead in the polls as much as they are concerned about the new Apple iPod 5. Have you heard about the problems with... Oh, my goodness.
Oh,
this
that action... Yeah, okay.
Let me read this story by Rick Romero. And this comes from Pasadena, California. The new iPhone 5 may be setting records for sales compared to previous models of the iPhone, but it certainly is not without its problems. First, the new connector requires an adapter to work on all Apple products, which cost $29. Now, for those of you who aren't aware, Apple was actually known as being an innovator, and this seems crazy that this would be innovation, but all of their adapters and their pieces, all of their appliances were compatible.
Well, Caitlin, their Apple products are made by Chinese slave labor, and if they can bilk a little bit more money out of the public with these slave goods, why not?
Okay, well, second, they're putting their own clients off. After Apple's new Maps app replaced the popular Google Maps in Apple's new operating system, iOS 6, there are complaints that the mapping service offers fewer details and lacks public transit directions, among other problems. Now, there is a video you can watch, and on that video, and it's 7 minutes long, but on the video, they actually show some of the images that come up when you put certain addresses in these applications. And there was one that showed a freeway ramp that was under construction, and it was really just a dirt road, and I thought that was rather interesting. It was even showing up. But now, according to tech media writer Donald Bell, the iPhone 5 seems to have a bug with its Wi-Fi system. There seems to be a multitude of Wi-Fi issues that are popping up right now, from it being on Wi-Fi while you're meaning to connect to 4G or not, recognizing your home Wi-Fi network, or devices that aren't even iPhone but use the iOS 6 like iPad or the iPod Touch not being able to connect to the Wi-Fi, said Bell. Apple customers expect perfection and more from Apple products, but they're wondering if Steve Jobs' replacement as CSO, this is Tim Cook, is the new CEO there, is up to the job. And the thing that the video showed that was so entertaining was all the different times that Jobs has come in before the public on that wonderful stage with the great graphics behind him, apologizing for glitches and offering solutions. And this is one time that Apple's really not doing anything. So
it's heartbreaking to me because since the beginning I was a big Apple supporter, and now it's just I feel disgusted even using their products. That's sad for me because I love their innovation. Many people did, and the distinction between the PC and the Apple product, and now it's just I don't know. It's such a bummer. It's getting to be like to the point where. I mean, what? I got to run Linux on some handmade constructed computer system just to avoid these issues. How about, do you want to take a commercial break here?
Sure, but let me tell you, I want to give everybody a heads up here. Michael and I frequently tell you to be political with your dollars and your purchases.
Vote with your dollars.
Exactly. And according to the stock market this last week, people were voting with their dollars. The
what happened?
Value of the stock dropped from $700 to
Apple stock?
Yes, to $660 or less. It's still dropping. So people are voting by their lack of confidence in Apple.
Oh, well, that's good news. It is. I mean, seriously, it sends a message. And let their profits reflect our decision. I mean, our disgust, our disdain. It's amazing. Like, you brought up a great point. Well, of course, we talk about it often, but you almost can bypass the whole political system by voting with your dollars. You want to get corporations in line? Man, just stop buying their crap. GMO foods, like seriously, that's why if enough of us just became aware and were concerned about this, it would be solved. It would be case over. As constituents, eventually the politicians would get around going like, oh boy, the natives are restless on these issues. We got to do something. So with that, let's take a 2-second break and we'll be right back. A lot of stuff to cover. We're on air till 6 o'clock today. Don't go away.
You're listening to RiverWestRadio.com. The kitchen is the heart of the home, but at Monsanto, we're a megalithic agricultural group attempting to destroy farmers all across your country. We bring you horrible foods that attack your stomach lining, DNA, give you kidney and liver failure. Monsanto, bringing Franken foods to your family at home. Don't you just hate us? Say no to GMO. Are you tired of commercials always telling you that you're tired? When you know you're tired because you wake up early and go to bed late, and every moment in between is spent trying to figure out how you're going to make the next dollar. Well, you're not alone. Millions of Americans are walking around in a sleep-deprived, zombie-like state, amplified by psych meds and pharmaceuticals found in the drinking water. So just be glad you're not one of them, unless you are, in which case I'm sorry you had to hear this. But wait, there's more. If we keep at this current pace, we will surely lose our democratic republic and soon be standing in food lines for the poisonous rations the new totalitarian government will hand out. Don't delay, get involved, get informed.
And now, live from River West Radio, the man with words worth listening to, your host, Michael Wordsworth.
for our interview, and then we will be back live with Zav LaPlay, and we'll have an interesting conversation on hacktivism.
All right, let me see. You know what, the FBI one, we haven't played that in a while. It's always a good one. That'll give you 4 minutes to set up everything, Zav. So, well,
we're actually...
The FBI headquarters.
I can cut it short, too. No, I'm sorry. Here's Zav's... Zav's, he's a pro. We got him in the thing. We'll play the FBI interview. Would you like to introduce yourself, sir?
I'm Zav LaPlay.
Zav LaPlay, and the topic of the day here is?
Hacktivism. Zav was kind enough to sponsor a movie at the Milwaukee Film Festival, which is wrapping up on Sunday, is it not?
You probably know better than me.
Okay, well, I'll look at the newspaper in just a moment because I did bring the copy. Mm-hmm. We were able to go see the movie that he chose to sponsor this year, which is taking down hacktivism, I believe. Was that the
story of hacktivism? I forget.
It was the taking of, the ticket sitting on my...
Story of Anonymous.
Yes, it was. We Are the Legion.
Yeah, We Are Legion.
Legion, and it was. They were talking about hacktivism, and a little bit about the history of WikiLeaks and other things. And the reason this is pertinent to us now is because there was a story just breaking over the weekend about how they suspected that Iranian terrorists were actually trying to hack into the U.S. bank systems and start messing around with the finances in the United States. And from what I learned from the movie, this is not the kind of thing that they do. I mean, they do things that appear to be similar.
Wait, are they drawing a correlation between the two?
Yes, they're calling it hacktivism as well.
Oh, okay.
Hackers, political action with hacking.
Well, are we talking about Anonymous and other groups, or is there? I mean, what's the structure of this thing? I probably don't want to give the FBI. Not the FBA dossier here, but
okay. Well, what we'd like to do, or what the purpose of having Zav here to help us was basically to let people know that there is a type of political activism called hacktivism, and it is considered to be a form, as a lawyer explained in the documentary, this is considered to be a form of a cyber sit-in, which means that it is covered under the amendments as activating your right for free speech.
Now, is it considered, how is it looked upon by the FBI and the so-called authorities, the self-imposed authorities? Do they consider this like a terrorist act, or is this part of the cybersecurity bill? Is that part of the reason why they're trying to shut down this thing and call these people, if you're activists at all, through a computer, that now you're possibly a threat to the government?
I'm sure that this comes under Homeland Security. There's no doubt in my mind, because the people who were investigated under that domain. So, and there are many different ways people do this, but basically what groups like Anonymous are using tactics that are public information, open and available to everybody, to help bring down, tie up, and basically crash different sites. Like, for instance, I think one of their more famous battles was with the group Scientology, in which case there actually were some arrests made, and they did prosecute one fellow for using what they call a low-ion cannon. Now, this is something you can go to the internet, you can Google this, you can get a free program, and you can load onto your computer a software program that will repeatedly bombard a site with a request for information. And these are called packets. And this cannon is capable of blasting a site with 800,000 packets. Consequently, totally overwhelming it, can possibly bring it down.
It's the same thing as if you had the ability to make 800,000 phone calls to a company at the same time.
Precisely.
So it's a lot. So in other words, it's definitely harassment. It's definitely, I mean, just to make the parallel, if you were calling in, but I mean, definitely calling in a phone company isn't a crime, you know? So, I mean, I was just doing... So we were just comparing the hacktivist attempt to use the low ion cannon packet bomb burst to paralleling as if, say, consumers, 800,000 consumers could call in at a company at one time. Mm-hmm. It'd be very much the same thing. They're basically tying up the phone lines.
Well, what the parallel that their lawyer was making was kind of like a sit-in on the web. So just
cyber sit-in.
Yeah, but the thing is also, I mean, these people it's a lot of people, a lot of anonymous people. So you don't even know who anonymous really is. It can be all kinds of people.
It's definitely not an organized group.
Well, it's organized in an unusual way. It's not organized in a way we're not used to.
Okay, there's no central head figure. There's no central organization to it.
Right. They compared it to a flock of birds in the sky where all of a sudden one of the birds goes in a certain direction and for some reason all the rest follow.
Okay.
But it's not necessarily that there's a head bird or a lead bird in the group. It just kind of happens in these ways that are sort of unlike the normal structures we're used to. And
well, right, and this is generally
in organizations.
Very, very good. I mean, I'm glad these people are out there. They sound like they're the last-ditch attempt we have towards addressing grievances, petitioning these issues. I wish they'd call in on Monsanto and shut them down.
Well, I think that the nature of the thing is an ongoing phenomenon that is sort of it's been happening ever since the internet began, and it's just gotten stronger and stronger. It's not something that is, well, hopefully it's not something that's going away anytime soon. It's probably going to grow, but it's also not something that you could say came in the nick of time. It's almost a part of the order of things, the natural order of things. We've never lived in this kind of a reality before.
Okay, really unprecedented.
This is an unprecedented reality to have so many people communicating in such a fast-paced way
across the globe,
over huge expanses of space and time. So,
indeed,
or expanses of space. So it's never happened before, but it's sort of a natural outcome of the phenomenon of the web itself. So to say it in the nick of time is almost, it's like, well, I would say it's just part of the new reality.
Okay, it's an
have these
organic development from
and then
this.
We'll see how, figures of authority will try to mitigate that, because they will, people are working just as hard to put those things, to quell that kind of behavior as
the cybersecurity bill, which
right. they recruit hackers are constantly recruited by the military and the government and so on as well.
They need them too.
Yeah, by security groups in order to figure out how to fight against hackers. And of course, Julian Assange comes in as an example of
sort
of the most high-profile example of media cyber activism, I guess. I don't really know what you call it.
Well, from Julian Assange from WikiLeaks, who I don't know if he ever got his extradition in that South American country.
No, he's still there.
Is he still there?
He's still in the London
embassy.
Yeah, just holed up. I mean, it's one of those things that they're probably just, they kind of have him in almost a checkmate type of situation, but
no, it's kind of like that movie Airport, where Tom Hanks got stuck there and couldn't leave the airport.
Like
this guy's shaving and showering in the embassy bathroom and ordering pizzas.
Well,
till further notice.
Yeah,
some of those embassies are pretty plush in the inside, so that's not an issue. But there is a difference between how Anonymous works and what the feds are claiming is going on with the U.S. banks. And as Zob was saying, these people, they're all out there. It's a whole different type of networking. And the question becomes, is it actually vandalism? Because right now, that's really the only charge they have to wave against some of these people if they can catch them.
Vandalism.
It's vandalism.
How do they, they're not changing content on the website, which...
it would be the same as if you went to the store, if it was a store, for instance, and blocked the door by having 500 people out in front of it.
Okay.
It's very strange.
But the parallel's there, because then...
it's weak.
The question becomes, though, how in America that was founded on the right to address grievances, how do we get to this point? Just because it's new technology, we have to reconsider...
Exactly. Well, it's rights. It's individual rights versus rights for a group. I understand that Monsanto. Oh my goodness, has as much of a right to assemble and be a business as, the local organic co-op does. Ultimately, that's what we stand
and
for
we
here.
have the right not to buy them.
Exactly.
And that's the way, in an ideal world, or an ideal, truly free market system, that's the way it would work.
Right, but do we have the right to bombard them to the point where we can tie up their phones and stop them from being able to do business for a few days, or to crash their site because we overwhelm?
It sounds to me like this falls under the same guidelines as strikes and protests.
Exactly.
The same considerations. If you have a mob of people showing up at a store, the business should ask its first question is, what did I do to elicit this mob's reaction?
Yeah, Monsanto doesn't care.
And anybody, the banks, the question can almost become, here's where it gets sticky, did hacktivists really hack into the banks, or was it just done by those who want to push through the cybersecurity bill, and a false flag is what I'm insinuating.
Exactly.
Here.
Or was it a rogue person from the Netherlands? And I'm sorry to pick on the Netherlands, but some of these geniuses seem to have nothing better to do in the long, cold nights with no sun, and they become these unbelievable genius of how to manipulate things. It could have been a rogue person.
Oh, that's what I'm saying. Don't underestimate a bored person.
Right. But the point is here, they're trying to decide whether this is something that is a litigious offense. If you crash a person's website or you tie up their phones and prevent them from conducting business, what are you doing? Is there a crime here? Can they shut you down? So the vandalism thing is really oblique. I mean, I don't know about that, but disturbing the peace would be the only thing else they could do, and you'd actually have to be physically vying with somebody to really be able to incite disturbing the peace as a charge.
Well, if we're going to charge that, let's charge our own government's foreign policy as disturbing the peace globally. I mean, the hypocrisy is ridiculous.
It is. It's astounding. The other thing that I really very much like about this new type of political activism is that it's thumbing a face, it's a thumb in the face to people who would like to be able to track our every move, be able to identify each and every one of us and know what we're doing all of the time. And these people are able to get in and out and do these things anonymously. And I think that's hugely important in this day and age, where we were reporting stories just 2 weeks ago about how they can now track you through your phone. Or if you're using a web camera on your own laptop, it's just insane. It's insidious.
Google has been caught now time and time again and has admitted that they were going around with their Google vans stealing personal data off of people's computers from the neighborhoods.
Why? For what purpose?
Well, honestly, I can only give you my personal opinion because I can't obviously document or prove this, but it has been considered that the FBI, the CIA, gave the front money to start Google. Google was not just an independent company. It is said, and I'm sure a lot of hacktivists understand this, that Google was started with CIA front money. So we're talking about Google stealing data from people. That's been admitted. They were driving around with their little van stealing the data. So how is it that's okay, but then, this suddenly is a big issue with the authorities?
Right.
But I got to tell you that I really appreciate the fact that they are able to stay anonymous. And me as an individual, I would really like to have the knowledge to be able to keep my interactions private.
You have that right.
I don't have the ability.
And they say now, Michael Zuckerberg didn't even say, look, nothing's private on there. You put it on there, you're just giving up your... So they're telling you right off the bat, you gave up your right the second you posted it.
Yeah. Which is, it is a major issue, and it's going to become it became serious in Egypt, for example, and it'll probably become, it's going to get more and more serious. It's becoming more and more a part of our reality, but it takes a breaking point or something, some kind of crisis to realize, this is what's happening. We haven't faced the consequences of losing all our privacy and being so easily identifiable. Like being able to, for example, if someone has a problem with me, they can associate me with all of my friends, and they can find out who all my friends are and
Right.
what their associations are, and they can create these. I mean, it's never been easier for the government to track people and control them. in
And
a
now,
sense.
look, some might say that that's comforting because they feel giving up their liberties for security is somehow a good move. But what?
Well, there's truth to that. I mean, all those things are. There's like a tiny bit of truth to all those things.
A tiny
goes
bit,
too far.
But what happens when the tyrant takes over the whole system? What happens when we no longer have a representational government body and suddenly you have no right to privacy? And look, just historically, we've never had the internet before, but could you imagine when, I mean, the Nazis, IBM provided them with the initial slot cards to track the Jews.
Right, or to work. It was more in the concentration camps.
Okay, was it that?
Yeah,
Okay.
organizing in the. I'm pretty sure it was.
Either way, it was
keeping track of
computer-assisted
people
tracking.
in the camps. Yeah.
And because heretofore that was somewhat difficult. It was difficult for the Romans. I mean,
Sure. Yeah. As you go back in
Good
time,
God,
Jesus,
show
yeah.
me your ID.
organizing data and so on is, it's part of the progress of information technology, and yeah, it is Orwellian in a sense, but there are also things coming from the other direction, and that's kind of what Anonymous is about. Is that they're sort of the opposite, the good side of the internet, where people are able to do good using data and lots of information or fast communication, and similar to flash mobs and so on,
Let's talk about that.
which can also be bad as well, but they can be good.
Especially if you don't like what they're doing. You raised a really good point, and I'd like to just expound on this just a little bit. And that was what they did in Egypt. Michael, you and I were talking about the fact of how the president, before he was forced to step down, had actually blacked out the country. He had somehow flipped the switch and brought darkness on the people. They couldn't use the web. They shut down internet access, and I think even some cell phone use as well, because of course, you can get the internet through the iPods and things.
Well, it's said
Or
that
iPhones.
our president has the same kill switch on our internet
I'm sure they do.
that they can at one point. And so you would have to rely on these hacktivists at that point to open
Exactly.
it back up.
Well, they didn't open it back up. They used publicly available things. They found different networks, and they were able to communicate the information to the people on the inside Egypt, enough to say, look, if you want to get on, if you need access, come this way. And they provided access for, I think it was over 100,000 people.
That's a lot.
And that's how we were able to get messages and what was going on. That's how we were able to get lifetime video feeds and footage of some of the atrocities because of groups like Anonymous. So I think Zav has a very valid point, and I have a hard time having a problem with these people, even if some of what they do may be questionable in terms of the law and preventing business. But the good that they do far outweighs anything.
I'm somewhat comforted knowing that these people are out there.
I am as well, and that there might be a way for me to be able to preserve my own privacy. Zav, do you remember any of the details of how Anonymous and some of those people were able to set up networks for the people in Egypt to get out of Egypt in terms of getting video to us and information, what was happening?
I don't remember. I wasn't. It was the details of how it worked was kind of outside of some of my understanding, but
Mine too.
one thing that they did was they helped the government took down the internet overnight. The Egyptian government took down the internet for all of Egypt, which was mind-blowing to think about, and also sort of like an indication, again, in a crisis, who knows, your whole city could, if you had some sort of the people in charge, if they wanted to, they could take down the internet. The whole infrastructure of the internet belongs to corporate interests, to private interests. But anyway, so they did. But then what these activists did is that they created modem numbers. I think it was so instead of going through the typical sort of
like servers?
internet that
They
we're used to.
rerouted it.
They
used
created new-
wireless routers. You set up antennas as relays, so wherever you can get an actual signal, you.
But I don't
bump
think it
through
was a
those.
physical thing. I think
No?
it was all just
No,
it was
it
all
was
done
all-
from the United States.
And it was all done through computers.
Yeah. Well, because here's the thing: is that you can take the internet down, but can you take all the? Then you'd have to take all the phones down because the routers run through phone lines.
Okay,
Where
so-
the internet runs through, it's like phone lines, but it's
It
exclusively
can come from
for the
satellite.
internet.
Is that the
cable?
Ethernet?
Well, Ethernet, yeah, Ethernet
Okay.
would be that.
All right.
So anyway, for the Egyptians, what they did was they created new routing or new modem numbers so that people could just use modems to do dial up.
I got you. Dial up.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that was their solution.
Okay,
was
great.
creating
No,
dial-up.
that's a simple solution, actually.
Yeah, and but besides for that, I'm not sure what else they did. They might have also done some things involving like trying to take Facebook down or things like that. And these activists or hacktivists also helped with all of that. And again, also repeating information, taking tweets. I think they took Twitter down or something like that.
They
but
took
They
everything,
were able
yeah.
to repost tweets or something. But anyway, there's
the question becomes, for me, what was Mubarak so concerned about? Why would he have to shut this down?
Well, the riots and the fact that the police were using deadly force, people were getting killed. They were going above and beyond what most people would consider humane restraint.
He was afraid of losing power, plain and simple. And it just goes to show, these politicians will tell you anything that you want to hear, but when you get right down to it, why do people want to be politicians to begin with? It's usually hunger for power in certain ways. Not all, obviously, I mean, it's always funny when you hear people saying, "Oh, I hate big government," and they are government. They're politicians.
The demigods.
When politicians tell you they don't want government, it's a little ironic because they are government. That's what they do for a living. But anyway, so Mubarak was a politician and he wanted to hold on to power. Power is a very intoxicating thing, and people don't let go of power very easily. And even if maybe Mubarak, maybe he had his moments of doubt, but he's leading and he's got all kinds of people around him who also need to hold on to their power. And so it's just history bears out that people with power don't like letting go of it. That's kind of a basic
and so
principle of history.
And now we have this internet worldwide, and it's something that they can't clamp down on. I mean, China is a good example of the attempt to shut it down and keep it under a heavy firewall. You can't get stuff in or out of the country. And quite frankly, honestly, so much of the PCs, these Macs, they have so many back doors built into them. That's why the operating systems run slow. And quite frankly, they back doors built into these things. So why do they have back doors? Because just in case if the government ever needed to. Hey, Freddie Lee in the house, everybody. Freddie Lee Band. Talking about hacktivism today. Freddie
and the Milwaukee Film Festival, which runs through October 11th. And if you'd like screening dates and times, visit MilwaukeeFilm.org. That's MKE Film, all one word, .org. And I'm actually trying to go through the schedule and see if the movie is going to come on again. And unfortunately, I'm already through to Monday, and it has not come up again. So that would be a shame because it was a wonderful film.
It was. Tell you what, we're going to take a commercial break. Come right back. Plenty of stories to cover.
We'll say thank you for say thank you to Zob for joining us. Get those adjectives correct.
I'm sure he'll pop back in. He has a store to run here. It's kind of interesting. We're broadcasting out of a video store, so it could be worse. Could be a chicken coop.
What? What?
Anyhow, I'm Michael Wordsworth, and
I'm Caitlin Redding, and we say hello to Freddie Lee.
And Freddie Lee
as we take a commercial break. Correct? Are we going to be listening to the FBI interview this time?
No, this one I don't know. This set 3 has I just have like these preset commercial packets that I put together, but You know what? Maybe we could do the FBI because it's just, I'll do set 7, which includes the FBI.
There we go.
Now we got 5-minute and 34-second break, but you'll be entertained by quality entertainment and not just us rambling about how bad the world is. We'll be right back.
Bye-bye.
Don't go away. There's more to come. Friday. Yeah. Breaking down the news.
You're listening to RiverWestRadio.com. Every day, people wake up all over the world and hear commercials like this one, with soft music and a soothing announcer's voice telling you how great some big corporation's new technology will help you and your family. But it is important to remember, these companies could give a flying f*** about you or your family. That's why Breaking Down the News has made this commercial to counter their commercials. Don't be fooled by them. The battle is to gain control of your mind through media propaganda. Just say no to evil corporations and their slick computer graphics designed to brainwash viewers. Vote no with your dollars, and we will regain the health of our nation, one consumer at a time. The FBI headquarters is a huge modern building in the middle of downtown. Cars and trucks drive past the front entrance on this very active street, and these doors will lead us to the elevators that will take us to the office of Deputy Director Hank Polarank.
Welcome to the FBI headquarters. Can I help you?
Yes, I have an appointment with Deputy Director Polarank.
And your name is?
Michael Wordsworth from RiverWestRadios.com, breaking down the news show.
Michael who? No.
The staff at the FBI was professional and courteous as they greeted me, and after a few security complications were smoothed out, I was soon able to get in to do my interview. Michael Wordsworth from Breaking Down the News.
Hey, come on in, take a seat.
And it was an interesting interview. How many terrorist plots has the FBI foiled in the last few years?
We've been busy, very busy with ongoing investigations. It's hard to say off the top of my head. 10, maybe 12?
And out of those 10 or 12 incidents, how many of those were not terrorist plots instigated by the FBI?
None actually.
Not one.
Well, the underwear bomber, that wasn't us.
But it came to light that the underwear bomber was forced onto the plane by a well-dressed man, and he didn't go through security. That wasn't the FBI.
No. Might have been Secret Service. I think they handled that one.
I'd like to quote an article from the New York Times. Can I?
Sure, go ahead.
This is an article by David K. Shipler, published April 29, 2012, and I quote, "But all these dramas were facilitated by the FBI, whose undercover agents and informers posed as terrorists offering a dummy missile, fake C4 explosives, a disarmed suicide vest, and rudimentary training. Suspects naively played their parts until they were arrested. When an Oregon college student, Mohammed Osman Mohammed, thought of using a car bomb to attack a festive Christmas tree lighting ceremony in Portland, the FBI provided a van loaded with 55-gallon drums of inert material, harmless blasting caps, a detonator cord, and a gallon of diesel fuel to make the van smell flammable. An undercover FBI agent even did the driving, with Mr. Muhammad in the passenger seat. To trigger the bomb, the student punched a number into a cell phone and got no boom, only a bust. What do you say to that?"
What's your point?
My point is it sounds like we really don't have a terrorism problem in America beyond those plots the FBI makes up itself.
How did you get in here? Agent Smith.
Be right in. What is it, sir? Hey, wait. How did you get in here? I don't believe this. He doesn't have clearance, sir. You'll have to come with me.
He doesn't have clearance? How did he get past you?
He snuck in here when I went to pay for the pizza delivery. I was there for a while. I wanted exact change.
Okay, hey, thanks for the interview. That's all I need now.
Sir, stop. Come back here.
He doesn't have clearance?
Thank you. Talk soon. You guys take care.
Security, we have a gate jumper headed for the elevators.
And whereas this interview did not yield all the answers I wanted, I did get to state my point. And as I was leaving the FBI building, I had the realization that making my point was worth the trip. You're listening to RiverWestRadio.com.
And we're back, boy. Did that go quickly? Tell you what, let's cut over to, we haven't done the, what do you call it here? Henry Kissinger? Yeah, we could do that. How about David Rockefeller? David Rockefeller's always a good one. You guys know who he is? Yeah, you should. Let's see, here we go. David Rockefeller. Let's do an interview with him. And then we'll come back and discuss more news. You're listening to Breaking Down the News on River West Radio. I'm Michael Wordsworth, sitting in with Caitlin Redding. We'll be back right after this interview with David Rockefeller.
You're listening to RiverWestRadio.com. Once again, the Bilderberg meeting is happening today in Chantilly, Virginia, where many of Europe's top bankers and technocrats are gathering in secret to plan the global economy for the next 12 months. To get a deeper view of this, Breaking Down the News has met with David Rockefeller in Virginia. Mr. Rockefeller, thank you for joining us.
Yes, of course. I'm sure this is a big moment in your pathetic life as a news talk show host.
Now, do you prefer that I call you Evil or just Mr. Rockefeller or David Evil Rockefeller?
Ooh, that sounds good, yes. Call me David Evil Rockefeller. I like the sound of that.
Very well, Mr. Evil Rockefeller. Now, Bilderberg, the not-so-secret meeting taking place this week...
Now, hold on there a second. We are grateful to the Washington Post, Time Magazine, and other great publications whose directors have attended our meetings and respected their promises of discretion for almost 40 years. But now, since the New York Times betrayed me, I would like to retract my praise for the cowardly media outlets that leaked our little get-togethers to the mainstream. Boo! Hiss! Hiss! It would have been impossible for us to develop our plan for the world if we had been subjected to the lights of publicity during those years. But the world is more sophisticated and prepared to march toward a world government. The supranational sovereignty of an intellectual elite and world bankers is surely preferable to the national auto-determination practiced in past centuries.
But Mr. Evil...
That's David Evil Rockefeller to you.
My apologies.
No, you should get it right. You're a reporter for Lucifer's sake.
Pardon me, David Evil Rockefeller.
That's better. Normally, we hate to be forced out of the shadows, but some fat bastard keeps blowing a bullhorn at my hotel room all weekend, shouting, "The answer to 1984 is 1776 or something like that." I mean, what the Hades does that mean? Well, this unruly blowhard has got the people all up in arms.
Well, yes, the people are revolting.
They most certainly are.
Pardon?
The people, yes, they are most revolting.
No, I meant the people are revolting against these secret meetings taking place now that the public has become aware of them.
Oh, that. Well, of course, but they don't pay attention. They don't listen. Most don't even know who I am or what I do.
That isn't true. Not of the young people these days. They don't see much of a future ahead of them because of men like you and the Bilderberg attendees. The younger generations are starting to really pay attention.
Ah, but that is exactly why I created Justin Bieber. Made him out of some spare parts I had laying around.
I would still say the tide is turning and the people are waking up to your corrupt technocratic system.
This present window of opportunity, during which a truly peaceful and independent world order might be built, will not be open for long. We are on the verge of a global transformation. All we need is the right major crisis, and the nations will accept the new world order.
All right, calm down, calm down. At this year's meeting of the Bilderbergers, you've got some big-time European heavyweights there. Dr. Joseph Ackerman, Angela Merkel, Herman Van Rompuy, all meeting with you to figure out what to do with the economy for the next 12 months. Now, if Greece is to leave the Eurozone, the rumor is that the Bilderbergs are panicking.
I don't think Greece is going to leave the euro. Germany doesn't want it to leave the euro, and Greece signed off on this memorandum with Troika, as it's called, which is effectively turning their sovereignty over to outside forces, and it's up to Germany, not the Greek people. They lost their sovereignty. I don't see that happening. It's not up to them. It's not their choice. Germany wants to keep Greece, to keep the euro cheap. If it wasn't for Greece, the Deutschmark would trade like the Swiss franc. It would be 20 or 30% higher, and their whole export model would crumble. Right now, Germany is making it out like bandits. They're making money the old-fashioned way.
By earning it?
No, by stealing it. Since the reunification of Germany, something that wouldn't have happened without the euro, Germany has become a superpower once again.
Basically, it's a leveraged buyout. All the assets of Greece are being taken by outsiders. And those are good income-producing assets like shipping, tourism, lotteries.
You are forgetting the gold mines. Don't forget the gold mines.
Right, gold mines. Those were privatized and sold off, correct?
Yes, approximately 111 tons of gold. I'm going to melt it all down and make little figurines of Justin Bieber that the kids can pray to.
But the IMF is bankrupt and they're lending money to Greece. They had to borrow trillions to execute a leveraged buyout.
Ah, but the real trick is getting the Greeks to sign on to this debt. Get it? We borrow the money to lend to them and then take over their sovereignty as we buy out their assets. It's brilliant, simply brilliant.
And then those assets go back to the IMF creditors.
They want the fees. Christine Lagarde says, just give me the fees. Give me my salary and you can rob the Greeks blind for all I care.
Evil. Truly evil.
That is why I am called David Evil Rockefeller.
So, it's like Mitt Romney when he was at Bain Capital. They just look for small companies and gut them. And in a like manner, Greece is just a small country that you can seize with a hostile takeover?
It is a Jimmy Goldsmith model, done on a bigger scale. Same thing. You pledge the assets of a country like Greece to secure loans to take over the country. Sell the assets, keep the difference, make lots of money. The people lose their sovereignty, their jobs, and I get to add another platinum-covered toilet in my horse stable.
So these Bilderberg meetings are a great way for you and the world's leaders to meet behind the scenes with no transparency and just basically decide the fate of any given economy.
Well, yes, and up until now it was a secret, but no matter. It was no coincidence that we took Ireland, Greece, Portugal, and then Spain in that order. This year, the big question is, where do we go next? France? Maybe UK is an interesting choice. It's similar to how you peasants buy houses, but we get entire countries for pennies on the dollar, you see.
The IMF, since the 60s, has preyed on Africa, then South America, then Southeast Asia.
Yes, well, while America was obsessed with Iraq, we were very busy taking over those regions.
But China threw you a curveball. They had a different model.
Well, China did good business, and that is inconsistent with Bilderberger policy. However, the U.S. can't really tangle with China because China is now the U.S. biggest creditor, and the whole thing is a sticky situation.
I would like to read you a quote from Bill Moyers about you. May I?
Ooh, yes. If it's about me, Mommy always talked about me, and I liked it. Talk about me, talk about me.
David Evil Rockefeller is the most conspicuous representative today of the ruling class, a multinational fraternity of men who shaped the global economy and managed the flow of its capital. Rockefeller was born into it, and he has made the most of it. But some critics see a vast international conspiracy he considers a circumstance of life and just another day's work. In the world of David Rockefeller, it's hard to tell where business ends and politics begins.
It is. It really is. Some days I wonder how history will look back on my takeover of the United States, and they will ask that very question and just don't know how I would answer even now.
So you admit that you want to take over the United States?
For more than a century, ideological extremists at either end of the political spectrum have seized upon well-publicized incidents, such as my encounter with Castro, to attack the Rockefeller family for inordinate influence they claim we wield over American political and economic institutions. Some even believe we are part of a secret cabal working against the best interests of the United States, characterizing my family and me as internationalists and of conspiring with others around the world to build a more integrated global political and economic structure, one world, if you will. If that's the charge, I stand guilty, and I'm proud of it.
Wait, didn't you write that in your personal memoirs?
Ooh, you're a smart one, Mr. Wordsworth.
Well, thank you, I guess.
No, I hate that. Hate it. The second we gain control of America, people like you will have to go. And by go, I mean disappeared with black hoods over your heads. Now that is scary. You should be scared. Very scared.
I am not afraid.
Oh, you will be. You will be.
This has been an exclusive interview with David Evil Rockefeller in Chantilly, Virginia. I'm Michael Wordsworth. Back in a moment.
The following program is brought to you in living color.
This is Breaking Down the News, bringing you headlines that should have made the front pages. Streaming live Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, 3:30 p.m. Central Standard.
And now, live from River West Radio, the man with words worth listening to, your host, Michael Wordsworth.
All right, we're back in black here. Federal court rules in favor of indefinite detention of U.S. citizens. Obama's emergency stay on NDAA block extended. A federal appeals court has ruled that the U.S. government can still indefinitely detain citizens should it wish to do so under the Obama administration's National Defense Authorization Act. The ruling came in the form of an extension of an emergency stay of a district court judge's order that had previously struck down the defense bill's provisions altogether. Last month, District Judge Catherine Forrest permanently blocked the NDAA provision, saying that, quote, First Amendment rights have
already been harmed and will be harmed by the prospect of this law being enforced, end quote. However, the very next day, the Obama administration moved to appeal this decision in an attempt to reinstate the indefinite detention provisions. The administration characterized the ruling by Forrest as unconstitutional. Oh boy, is that a hypocrisy, huh? Federal judge in New York, Raymond Lohier, L-O-H-I-E-R, sorry, don't know how to pronounce his last name. Well, this federal judge in New York, Raymond Lohier, then granted the Obama administration an emergency stay that temporarily blocks Forrest's ruling. I guess one judge blocked another judge in the president's behalf. Well, late yesterday, a 3-judge motions panel of the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Second Circuit extended that stay, supporting the administration's appeal and intimating that Forrest's ruling is flawed. This quote, we conclude that the public interest weighs in favor of granting the government's motion for a stay, said appeals court judges Denny Chin, Raymond Lohier, and Christopher Droney, wrote in a 3-page order that also expedited the appeal. All 3 judges on the panel were appointed to the appeals court by Obama. The order continues. First, in its memorandum of law in support of its motion, the government clarifies unequivocally that, based on their stated activities, plaintiffs, journalists, and activists are in no danger whatsoever of ever being captured and detained by the U.S. military. Well, that's a lie. Second, on its face, the statute does not affect the existing rights of United States citizens or other individual arrested in the United States. Well, that's according to this judge, but then again, don't forget that the John Warner Defense Act, the Patriot Act, both cover the fact that if you are found to be a political dissident and declared an enemy combatant, you immediately lose your citizenship status. So they could be in part telling a half-truth. No citizens will be abducted in this manner, but once they declare you an enemy combatant, you are no longer a citizen, and that law will not apply, nor will the Constitution. Hey, keep in mind right now, we've got 2 million people on a no-fly list, many of them seriously, congressmen, senators, kids under 8 years old. It only illustrates the absurdity of this no-fly list, and that once you're on that no-fly list, you have to suffer other ramifications because of it. For example, I believe buying a gun now would be an issue for you. And the thing is, like, well, how did I get on this no-fly list? Honestly, people don't really know. I mean, 5-year-old, 3-year-old children have been put on this list. Families that had nothing to do with anything ever are on this list. If anything, the no-fly list isn't there to protect America, but to simply set the stage for this rampant police state that's coming, where basically there are no constitutional rights, there are no civil liberties, but you'll still be able to drink beer and watch football until the economy collapses, and then you'll just be hauled off to detention centers. Anyhow, I'd go on with the rest of the lies that these judges put out, but basically, here's how it comes down. Concerned Americans have argued that the NDAA provision could see American citizens kidnapped and held indefinitely without charge. The lawsuit that Judge Forrest ruled on was brought by activists and journalists, including former New York Times columnist Chris Hedges, who argued that the law was unconstitutional because it could see journalists abducted and detained merely for speaking their minds. Hedges and other plaintiffs successfully argued that some provisions of the indefinite detention clause are so vague they would chill free speech and restrict the ability to associate with individuals or groups labeled enemies by the government. Critics have argued that the provisions also violate the Fifth Amendment, which specifically mentions due process of law, and the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment, which states that all people be treated the same under that law. Caitlin, this article kind of goes on for it, but I thought maybe you got something you...
Well, I was just, perusing through some of the usual sites that we go to, and I picked up the recent Health Ranger articles from Natural News, and I just wanted to point out that he has posted a few items that I think might be of interest. If you are still doubting what we are telling you about GMO and Monsanto, I refer you to naturalnews.com, to the Health Ranger articles. He posted one 10/5/212 here. Gary Null releases GMO Ticking Time Bomb mini documentary. Watch it here before it gets censored. And that's not a joke, folks. It could very well get censored. Another one, he has an article, GMO pushing no on 37, campaign forced to pull TV ads after caught blatantly lying. And I don't know if I could probably read just a little bit of this article. Of course, we know they're lying, but now they're publicly lying. Let's see. In a bizarre development on the fight for Proposition 37, and this is the GMO labeling initiative in California, the No on 37 campaign, funded by Monsanto and other agribusiness giants, has been forced to pull one of its own television ads. Let's see if I can pull this up. The ad does feature opinions from, and let's see if they'll let me tell you. Oh, it featured an opinion from an individual identified on screen as Dr. Henry I. Miller, MD, Stanford University, founding director of the FDA Office of Technology. But the title was a lie. Just like everything else about GMOs, it's all truly a bunch of lies based on fraud and trickery. As it turns out, Dr. Henry Miller doesn't work for Stanford University at all. He's actually a research fellow at the Hoover Institute, which just happens to be physically located on the same plot of land as Stanford University. There you go, folks. And by the way, anyone named a fellow of any institution is often just a globalist eugenist of some sort. In the case of Henry Miller, he's predictably a frontman for Big Tobacco and has pushed DDT and other toxic substances that threaten life on our planet. Gee, is anybody surprised?
Bastard.
Even the guy, this guy even said Fukushima radiation might be good for you.
Oh, so did Ann Coulter. I mean, oh God. No, seriously, she too was quoted as saying, "Oh, this is actually good for you. Radiation's good for you."
This is unbelievable. So according to the No on 37 people, merely having an office on the Stanford campus is enough to make you a professor there. Since you're physically located on that campus, you must be a Stanford professor, right? It's the same logic with GMOs. They must be safe because we say they are. There's no need to test anything. Just ignore all those deadly pesticides growing right inside the grains because those won't hurt you at all. And apparently claiming this man was a authority from Stanford University also violates their rules on who can say that. So.
Oh, man, the picture is pretty clear, isn't it? I mean, free speech, being eliminated, right to address grievances, and the corporate control. They just buy out all. It's controlled opposition. They buy everything out. Push
unbelievable.
Everybody.
Yeah, this guy is from, works for one of the biggest cigarette, Philip Morris. He works for Philip Morris, originally as a frontman for the tobacco company. Unbelievable. Just unbelievable.
It is, too, in other news here. Congress presses the TSA to crack down on insider threats from its own employees. The TSA's made a lot of news lately. There was the one guy that, yeah, I know, it's crazy. Agency previously announced intention to monitor workers. Well, there was this guy that ABC News had on for stealing the iPad. It was a great episode. Basically, they got him on video. They baited this guy. They baited him on purpose, okay? They were trying to get him to steal the thing. But that's not, come on. He's a TSA worker. They're not supposed to be stealing our stuff. No way, no how. This guy did get fired, but here, it was a beautiful sting by the news, ABC News. Who I don't like ABC News, but whatever. They did something right for a change. They got him on video stealing the iPad. Then they waited a week. I don't know why they waited a week, but they ended up tracking the iPad to his house. They went out to his house, and they go, hey, we recorded you stealing the iPad, and we want to pick it up here, let you know that we know that you stole it. And the guy says, it's not here. And they're like, really? Well, hold on. Let's call it. And so, like, they called the iPad, and an alarm went off that they built into the thing. So it started, ying, 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 whatever they do. And then...
it's got GPS chips. They're all chips so they can be located.
And... well, the guy ended up giving the iPad back to ABC News and said that it was his wife's fault. It's his wife's fault. She must have blames it on his wife. I mean, how cowardly, right? Well, that guy was fired. And recently, a Catholic priest that was a known child abuser, he was hired by the TSA.
Oh, my goodness. Yeah, they're not known for hiring the best screened and the best security risk employees either. They've had numerous, they've had pedophiles, they've had...
well, the reason is their screening works in opposite of what you would think it would do. In all seriousness, if they find out you're a pedophile or a piece of crap, a human being, you get the job.
Yeah, least most wanted, apply here, please.
Least most wanted, right. Well, congressional leaders are pushing the TSA to ramp up protections against what they consider an information technology insider threat. In other words, they're concerned that TSA employees will rebel or to attempt to sabotage the federal agency by leaking sensitive information. I really don't understand this, but I'm going to keep reading.
Okay.
A Department of Homeland Security Inspector General report released last week concluded that although the TSA has created an insider threat working group.
What? An insider group?
The Department of Homeland Security Inspector General report released last week concluded that although the TSA has created an insider threat working group and an insider threat section, the agency does not have adequate countermeasures in place against potential information leaks. I'm not sure what information the TSA would be in possession of that they would leak, but the report recommended that the TSA should actively train all of its staff on data protection and implement insider threat policies. Oh, was it the FBI guy? One of the FBI's got he got groped. That was another article by the TSA. He's at the FBI going through the air. Yeah, and they said, well, you got flagged, sir. We're going to have to, would you like a private room? And the guy reported that the guy went in, felt his buttocks, went a little too close to his genitals.
I thought that's what the x-ray machine that we have to walk through now was supposed to do.
Well, no, if you get flagged, you get singled out and they do a full check on you. I mean, they're not
just
going
for fun? It sounds like it's just for entertainment.
Well, the thing is, a couple of senators and congressmen, and now this FBI guy, I mean, a lot of people have been had to endure this.
Well, I'm glad to see they're not discriminating against us normal people. Usually it's somebody of a persuasion that's been blacklisted.
No, check it out. If you're one of these big bankers, I mean, way above the congressmen and senators, they're little people. They're closer to us than they are to the bankers. No matter how much they have, they're still like a fry cook has more in common with a millionaire than a millionaire has in common with a trillionaire. I mean, that's
okay. I'm sure. I guess that would make sense somehow. Interesting.
I mean, the millionaire lives in a nice home, but the trillionaire
lives in the sky or a protected dome.
Or several countries at once. I mean, they have 10 or 20 palaces across the world. And they fly private planes and helicopters. And now they have a new quick speed lane for security. Should that, for whatever reason, somebody like this has to go through TSA, they won't be treated like us little people.
Just great. Absolutely crazy. Should I cover some other little things here? Here's this is frightening. Now, I am actually on the website for, I believe this is the Wall Street Journal, but they're sure not letting me get much information for free. But here are some just little preview things. This is kind of a scary one, actually. Restart sought at nuclear power plant. Oh, boy. The company that operates the troubled San Onofre nuclear power station in California said it is seeking federal permission to restart part of the facility. Now, I'm not sure which one this is because it won't let me read the article for free.
That's funny because I had another article kind of related. So you're saying that is this nuclear facility here in America?
It's in California, and if you remember way back when Fukushima first happened, all of a sudden people were running to the stores to get their iodine and other things, but they were also questioning the stability of some of the facilities in California, and suddenly that became a big investigation. Well, consequently, they discovered that some of these places were not up to code and were having some operational problems, and this one in Onafree, I believe it's called, was shut. Part of it was shut down for a while, and now they're asking for permission to restart. Now, I'm not sure if they're on a fault line. I'm not sure about this particular one, but it's just crazy, And you have another story. Okay, so let's see what else is crazy here. Oh, here we go. U.S. officials move to shut down drug websites. U.S. officials moved this week to shut down websites owned by Canada Drugs, the internet pharmacy, the drug wholesaler that distributed counterfeit Avastin to U.S. doctors last year. Now, here's how this is serious. Canada is where a lot of people are going over the internet to get their prescriptions at prices they can afford. People who don't have Medicare, aren't retired, aren't entitled, don't have private insurance, can't afford it, have been able to pick up really common daily medications like blood pressure medications, cholesterol, arthritis particularly are extremely expensive medications. But you've been able to go to Canada, and with the doctor's prescription, most of the time, I think there have been occasions when you haven't had to produce a prescription, but they will sell you the drugs at a greatly reduced rate, even including the shipping. It's a lot cheaper, and people can actually afford to eat and take their medication the same month. So the U.S. here is kind of moving on a sideways path to take these guys down because the economic impact on American citizens is going to be huge. Just huge. Lots of people without their medications, and Walmart's not going to offer them $4 prescriptions on these things.
Wow. I guess it never stops here.
No, so we point out a lot of times how the government is making inroads to shut down things and control our lives. Well, this is pretty important, not to be able to access your pharmaceutical drugs because they're blocking this on a, I would say, somewhat bogus charge. I mean, maybe the drug Astatin, what was it, Astatin? Maybe it was a bad batch of Avastin, but that's not enough to... Anybody could make a mistake like that, even our big guys like Bayer.
Sure, they'll say what they have to get their agenda pushed forward. So, I mean, Americans were wondering for a long time why we were paying so much when Canadians weren't. And it's just kind of like you can't buy drugs over the internet or you can't buy them from other countries. And no, I mean, it was a big thing where, drugs were going to cost a lot of money in America one way or the other.
Here's a really, this is going to make you laugh or chuckle. Fed seeks to clarify plans. Federal Reserve officials are considering another revamp of their communications policies to clarify plans on interest rates. Apparently enough of us do not understand QE or fiat money or those types of things. I say QE still stands for the Queen Elizabeth.
Queen Elizabeth.
That's what so many people out there, the QE1, the QE2, those are the luxury liners that we all know as being like the first luxury liners,
Actually, these are space luxury liners. They take us to the moon and back.
Oh, do they now?
Yes.
I wasn't sure. I know that Richard Branson's planning on putting a biodome on Mars sometime in the next 2 years.
Maybe we can fly there to gamble. They'll relocate Vegas to Mars.
That would be, isn't that a movie that Arnold Schwarzenegger did?
Yeah, Total Recall. Total Recall. And, well, we'll be recalling more news in a minute. We're going to take a commercial break. We'll be right back. Thank you for listening. It's Friday, October 5th, 2012. Congratulations for making it this far. We'll be right back. Don't go away.
You're listening to RiverWestRadio.com.
The TSA has consistently made the news with bad reports about its moral conduct, questionable employees, civil rights violations, everything from workers stealing cash out of travelers' luggage
to trafficking drugs through airport security gates. Congresswoman Blackburn recently brought to the news media an awareness of the TSA's hiring of known child molesters and child porn collectors. My question is, why are we putting up with this? Why have we become so tolerant of being peasant slaves that we will acquiesce to anything? I've come to the DFW International Airport outside Dallas, Texas, to ask some questions of ordinary passengers and to interview the TSA workers themselves. Let's go in and see what they have to say.
I don't like what I have to put up with every time I fly.
Ted Wilsonberg travels by plane frequently and has to get groped on a regular basis. But does he have to put up with this?
No. Hell no. I'd keep these guys out of here if I could.
So you don't think that we need to be molested in the interest of national security?
No. Think about it. A police officer can't just come up and put their hands in your crotch. But these guys feel me up every time I pass through these gates.
But why do you put up with it?
I have to do this. My job depends that I fly 3 to 4 times a week. I have a family, you know?
The TSA stands for total suckasses when it comes to trampling on the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. How do they get away with it? I asked the director of security here at the airport at Dallas-Fort Worth. Yeah, well, when you pass through them doors, them front doors of this airport, you're no longer in America, boy. You're now in international territory bound by international law. And that's the great secret. The Constitution of the United States does not apply in its airports. Since September 11th, 2001, the Bill of Rights has been circumvented because of the threat of terrorism, when in actuality, you're more likely to die from a bee sting or be struck by lightning than actually be affected by terrorists.
The following program is brought to you in living color.
Kennedy died at 1 p.m.
Every day, our senses are being constantly bombarded by subliminal messages that are found in TV, movies, and advertisements. The subliminal messages we are subjected to are unrecognizable by the conscious mind and only recognizable in our subconscious mind. The messages and imagery are passively absorbed and then stored in our subconscious, where propagandists deliberately implant artificial thoughts, which in turn can affect our actions and attitudes later in life.
And now, live from River West Radio, the man with words worth listening to, your host, Michael Wordsworth.
And we're back.
Okay. I was actually going through a little bit more on the naturalnews.com site because the other sites ask us for money to read the news. So
I know. What are you going to say, right? That's Milwaukee Journal.
JSO Online?
No, the Wall Street Journal. They're notorious about you go through and they want you to pay for their propaganda. And New York Times is just an atrocity.
Absolutely.
People don't even want to deal with them anymore.
So that's why we have the good old Irish Times, although I wasn't finding the articles I was looking for. But here's a little bit more information on this. Gary Knowles releases the GMO Ticking Time Bomb mini documentary. Again, watch it here before it gets censored. There is a conspiracy of oppression taking place right now against free speech about GMOs. Just this week, YouTube censored a whistleblower video that exposed Whole Foods employees lying about the fact that Whole Foods sells masses of genetically modified foods. There's also a story here about Monsanto failing to attempt to explain away the tumors caused by GMO corn.
Interesting.
Do we want to hear about this?
Well, I mean, we can. I mean, we got time here, definitely. I got another article here I wanted to cover coming up, but I mean, the news doesn't stop here.
Okay,
so.
well, I'll
just to recap, we did discuss the GMO corn. Russia, rejected it, and with good reason.
Well, let's go on to something that's maybe even a little bit more critical, is that the British healthcare system now pushing pregnant women to get vaccinated for whooping cough. Now, let me tell you a little bit about whooping cough,
Pregnant
folks.
women.
Pregnant women.
They used to tell pregnant women do not get vaccinations.
Exactly. Because you can damage your child. And I'm not saying that all vaccines are bad, but what I want people to understand is that the solution that these viruses are put in contains something called Thimerosal, which is actually a mercury-based liquid.
It's also known as Therasol or Therasol.
Okay. And it's also found in contact lens solution. And many people are allergic to it. I myself cannot get regular vaccines. I can't go into Walgreens.
It's an adjuvant, actually.
Right.
It allows the vaccine to stick, and it's a mercury-based adjuvant.
Right, but it has the mercury in it, and some of us are actually allergic to this.
And in trace amounts, yes, human beings do not like mercury in this small amounts, but what happens is it accumulates.
Exactly, and that's the whole issue. So would you want to be giving a shot that it has a mercury-based delivery system to a woman who's pregnant with a child? I mean, that just doesn't seem to make sense to me.
Yeah, I can't remember if it goes right through the blood-brain barrier. Some things are protected in the womb, but
Right, but it might go through the placenta, I think is what you're talking about.
Yeah.
I don't know if it might very well, if it's small enough, it could. We can check in on that. But
either way, it's not a good call. What are they saying in their article?
well, they're saying if you're pregnant between the ages of 28 and 38, and it is in the UK, the government-run National Health Service, which is NHS, wants to see you vaccinated for whooping cough as part of a new mass vaccination propaganda campaign that appears to be sweeping the industrialized world. Mimicking the same tactics used by the U.S. healthcare machine, NHS is now trying to scare pregnant women into getting whooping cough vaccines by telling them that their babies could die without it, even though the efficacy of the vaccine has never been proven. Now, also known as pertussis, whooping cough is reportedly on the rise to the UK, with more than 4,700 confirmed cases of the disease, or more than 4 times the number confirmed in 2011. Even though only 9 babies in the UK are said to have actually died in 2012 as a result of whooping cough, and these more than they were as a result of other complications, related to a weak immune system. NHS is urging all pregnant women to get the vaccine in order to pass on immunity to their unborn babies. Let's talk about this a little bit. First of all, you can't just stick a vaccine in a pregnant woman and expect that the baby's going to have immediate immunity. It doesn't work that way.
The baby does not have an immune system yet.
Right. So the mother has to have enough time to build an immunity to the vaccine herself, and she will pass it on to the baby after it's born, usually through nursing, which is why we recommend breastfeeding your baby. Second of all, and more importantly, you probably remember as a child you were vaccinated for whooping cough, along with, I think it was diphtheria and polio.
TB.
Exactly. So this whooping cough that they're talking about is actually a disease called pertussis. And pertussis is very much like influenza in its symptoms and its actions.
Oh, so in other words, it's difficult to vaccinate against because it
mutates every year.
Jinx, and you can't talk till I say your name, Caitlin. Haha. we said mutates at the same time. So
okay. Well, I was going to give you a Coke, but that's all right. I know you don't drink soda.
I can't drink it. It's been known to cause cancer. California wants to put a label warning. In fact, California rejected the current Coke formula. I know, as flaky as those people out in California
I love
are,
them.
They're just like, take your pick. I mean, they're the only ones that they rejected the Coca-Cola formula, saying that it's known to cause cancer. We can't sell it because California has a law saying that anything that causes cancer has to be labeled as such.
I don't have any problem with that at all.
I mean, you can get down on smokers where it says that, warning causes birth defects and cancers. You got to understand that should be on your Coca-Cola label. That should be on your GMO foods.
Oh, absolutely.
Warning, this food is known to cause cancer.
Yeah, you should have a picture of those rats. It's a pitiful picture that's on the internet. It's
you
sad.
saw them?
I was trying to describe it last week. It was heartbreaking.
Right. Usually lab rats are actually cute. They're not your domestic or your undomesticated. What do you call it? Feral rat.
They don't look like rats. Yeah, they're not unattractive.
No, and they're not hostile and they're not aggressive. They're born into captivity. They're generally complacent, very compliant, and to see these poor little guys being held up, just their body's actually distorted by these tumorous growths.
It looks like, I describe it as looking like another rat or another mouse had started to
right.
evolve wrapped around the body of...
And in a sense, that's true. And to see them immediately goes, oh, wow, no, this is not what I want to eat. And that's why we freak out all the time and constantly are talking about GMO foods here. Because it is it's one of the biggest concerns humanity faces today. But
let me wrap up this.
Go ahead.
Science suggests whooping cough vaccine responsible for spreading the disease.
Oh, so another case where the vaccinations themselves, like polio, and I wish I could name a few.
Polio was a dead virus, I believe.
Well, there was what country was it? The polio vaccinations gave them polio. Was it in India?
Is that a Bill Gates program?
It probably was, because this guy loves vaccinations. Bill Gates, I didn't even get to tell you, this is great, he wanted to put vaccines in mosquitoes. Did I ever tell you this one?
Is this a fictional story?
No. This is actually something that this madman discusses about using his money for.
Are you serious? He actually said this publicly?
So then they could just fly around biting us and vaccinating the people.
What about the HIV virus and other ones that we have no vaccines against, that they will spread equally as fluently?
As far as we can tell, the HIV vaccine and virus both are a cover for a general immune deficiency disorder that's not really, it's not actually classified HIV. The Caucasian leukocytes will not bond to the HIV virus. That's why, so oddly enough, the AIDS virus, as it's described, is actually a bioweapon targeted towards people of African descent. I know, it's crazy, but that's...
So all the stories we've heard about men having sex with monkeys and...
Right, were absurd. What it turns out is the HIV virus scam has been a cover story for a general immune disorder caused by a succession of other things. And it specifically only can take this particular HIV virus is not susceptible by Caucasians because their leukocytes will not bond to this virus.
That is fascinating. Well, let's see what this says. As we pointed out earlier in this piece, the vast majority of whooping cough cases in these supposed outbreaks are among children that have already been vaccinated for whooping cough. Even after accounting for statistical variances between vaccinated and unvaccinated individuals, the fact remains that vaccinated children are far more susceptible to developing whooping cough than are unvaccinated children. And you can go to a link that they have here.
But Caitlin, that sounds like the exact opposite of what vaccines are supposed to do.
Well, let me tell you. Unfortunately, I've had to deal with this for the last 2 weeks through personal experience.
What happened?
First, I had a phone call from the school administration, the district office for the schools, telling me there had been an outbreak of whooping cough confirmed in my child's school.
Okay.
Then he got sick. He came home with pneumonia.
Okay.
I had to take him to the doctor. You would not believe the trouble I had getting them to actually test him for pertussis. Whooping cough is actually known by the name pertussis, which is a organism that, as we just discussed, like influenza, mutates every year. It is mild. It's not going to kill you. It presents like influenza, and you can't get vaccinated for it.
And the doctors concluded that there was no need to do a test for this because they thought it was just influenza.
The doctors felt there was no need to test my child because there was an underlying case of pneumonia. But then I was also ill and no one would test me. They were waiting for the results of the test that they had done on my child, which was inconclusive. Here's the other thing. There's 2 tests they can do. One is a blood test and one is a swab test, and it's a very uncomfortable swab test, let me tell you. But both of them can be inconclusive. 50% of the time, the swab test is inaccurate. So I never found out if we actually had it or not. But what I did learn was that pertussis actually is a bacterial infection. It's not a virus, which means antibiotics, rest, and you'll be fine.
Okay. Yeah. You know, a lot of people had some sort of undisclosed lung and throat condition and sinus condition here for a while. It was during the summer, and it lingered for like 2 weeks. I caught it myself, and finally I'm over it.
We talked about that, you and I, about how I felt that chemtrails, the prevalence of chemtrails this summer in particular, and with our drought conditions too, so our air wasn't getting clean very much. I just wonder how many of us are actually somewhat allergic to aluminum dioxide.
That's a great question, and unfortunately, we do know that aluminum is toxic to the human body.
Then how come aluminum dioxide is not toxic? It has to be.
It has to be. It contains aluminum, but keep in mind, Monsanto holds patents on seeds that are aluminum resistant, as if
we won't be alive to eat the food.
Caitlin, I swear, there's two levels of reality, it seems. There's just the stuff that, if you really take to heart what we're talking about, this situation in the world has gone way beyond even the stuff we're reporting. This is some of the inevitable. I mean, okay, Monsanto's one thing. That's one aspect. The economy's another aspect of looming, impending, doomish dangers. War, global war. I mean, we are...
I don't think we'll ever quite get to that. I don't share your pessimism on that. But here...
wait, on the war issue or the...
On the war issue. Here is a ray of sunshine, okay? Here's a ray for you.
Okay.
Furthermore, the Australian government's Pharmaceutical Benefits Advisory Committee, the PBAC, which specializes in researching the effectiveness of medicines, has determined that vaccinating parents against whooping cough provides absolutely no protection for the unborn children against whooping cough themselves.
But it sells a lot of vaccinations for the pharmaceutical companies, in which it's all about making money.
Hey, if we can run with a report from France, a 2-year study from France that can empower Russia to ban GMO corn and other nations to follow, hooray for the PBAC, because that will give us all the benefit of the research to just say no to vaccines.
We have a cult and culture here that worships doctors. And we don't want to think for ourselves. I guess that's the case. So we trust our doctors. Our doctors are bought and paid for by pharmaceutical companies. Basically, our citizens, including you, me, and everybody else, we're a cash cow from birth to death that just runs it through. I mean, they feed us the poisons, and they harvest the profits from the medical industry. It's pretty clear cut. I mean, you're going to the doctor, you're 62 times more likely to die from a doctor going to the hospital.
Is it from going to a doctor or going to the hospital because of all the diseases there?
Well, it's both, actually. The hospital deaths are up in terms of like people that checked in for a simple surgery and ended up dying.
The staph infection rate,
from staph
I have
infection.
noticed, and just from people talking to me, I haven't actually seen any numbers, but it is on the rise, and I think we can very easily get confirmation of the fact that staph infections in the hospital are on the rise. And remember, these things are becoming antibiotic immune.
We have, they're superbugs, they call them, and we're breeding them. And for all the people that, whether you're a hypochondriac or not, the point is that, one, we're not addressing the causes of our illness, which is a general lack of nutrition, minerals, and vitamins, nutrients in our own food.
And sterile food.
And then we've also got the drugs themselves just mask the problems. They don't actually attempt to cure it. Then you got all these poisons in the food, water, and air contributing to it. Sugar itself is a toxic substance. I just had my almond bun muffin here, but
I wasn't going to say anything because I'm equally as guilty. But
I've cut down my sugar by like 90%. So I'm doing 10% the consumption rate that I used to do, which is, look, I'm admitting it's really, cell phones cause us damage. Try to keep me off this damn thing. I bought a cord. You know what I'm saying? It's
but
crazy.
You can get a shield for those. The company in Chicago, there's an independent company that will sell you. There's an internet link. They will sell you the different things that you need to minimize the
That's
contact.
a good tip.
It's a wonderful thing.
Actually, we should, when you get more
We'll
organized,
find it.
we'll find it, we'll announce it, and I got to get one.
And your brain runs on glucose. It would prefer to get it from fruit, but a little bit of sugar is necessary in your diet, and natural products have sugar in them. Carbohydrates can be turned into sugar or into fats.
Is fruit glucose and fructose?
Yes. Well, glucose comes from the brain utilizes glucose. The body converts the sugar in fruit, which is fructose, into glucose by switching a molecule and changing the chain there. And that's what feeds the brain. And the body can do it with refined sugar, but just not as well. And it's kind of weak. It's sterile glucose, basically, I would call it. I'm sure I'm wrong. But your brain does need food. You need cholesterol. For your brain, matter of fact, your brain is pretty much composed of cholesterol. You need cholesterol, you need some sugar, you need some carbohydrates. Anybody who's advising you to go on a carb-free diet or anything that doesn't pertain to balanced nutrition is just going to make you sick. Yeah, you'll lose weight. You are guaranteed to lose weight anytime you change the diet that your body is adapted to. But a lot of these diets, like the Atkins diet, boy, do we have a history on that one. Once you go off them, the benefits are lost. And you get sick. You get sick because you've abused your body, and then you have to pay for it. So moderation, the Chinese have said this. All the great religions say this. All things in moderation, and you'll be okay.
Sure.
Except for Monsanto products.
No, and definitely, there's no level of moderation that you could take with those guys.
But here is a ray of sunshine, Mike. I'm sorry, I know you hate this.
I don't hate sunshine. Actually,
here's
I love
a ray.
sunshine.
High Court to weigh Monsanto patents. We talked about this. The U.S. Supreme Court has agreed Friday to hear an Indiana's farmer appeal that challenges the scope of Monsanto's patent rights on its Roundup Ready seeds. And to remind people who were not able to hear the interview with Charlie Keenan last Friday, Monsanto has developed what they call an envelope in order to be able to get Roundup into the seeds. And that envelope is the substance nicotine.
Really?
Yes. That's frightening.
Oh, it's just too weird.
A toxic, cancer-causing, poisonous
Well, it's
substance,
a neurotoxin. Nicotine
right,
is a neurotoxin.
is used in Monsanto's chemistry to get the Roundup inside the plant.
So that's what I mean. It's just like even if you don't smoke, you're still getting exposed to this.
But the court has decided finally, the Supreme Court has agreed to hear this. The Indiana farmers got a case. They won't give me any more information. Again, this is the Wall Street Journal's little pieces that I'm trying to look up here. But that's a ray of sunshine because that means they're actually going to address the issue, and it's quite possible a lot of information will then become public record.
I hope so. I hope so. Hang on. American government forces restart of Japanese nuclear reactors. I wanted to bring this up. This by WashingtonBlog.com. Americans are largely responsible for Japan's ongoing nuclear policy. This according to the Washington Blog. I guess I got to agree just from when I glanced at this article. Archaic nuclear reactor designs such as those used at Fukushima, built by American company General Electric, were chosen because they were good for making nuclear bombs. The U.S. secretly helped Japan develop its nuclear weapons program started in the 1980s. Therefore, the U.S. played a large role in Japan's development of nuclear energy, albeit indirectly. After the Fukushima disaster, in an effort to protect the American nuclear industry, the U.S. has joined Japan in raising acceptable radiation levels. U.S. Secretary of State Hillary Clinton also signed a pact with her counterpart in Japan, agreeing that the U.S. will continue buying seafood from Japan, despite the fact that the FDA is refusing to test seafood for radiation in any meaningful fashion. So U.S. actions are helping to protect a pro-nuclear policy in Japan. Indeed, mainstream Japanese newspaper the Nikkei reports that it was President Obama and Secretary of State Clinton who have pressured the Japanese to restart the country's nuclear program after the Japanese government vowed to end all nuclear power in the wake of the Fukushima disaster. The XSKF reports Japanese media has been saying for some time that it was the U.S. government who pressured the Noda administration to drop the zero nuke by 2030, which morphed into zero nuke sometime in 2030s. From its new nuclear and environmental policy decision, Tokyo Shinbun reported it a while ago, and now Nikkei Shinbun just reported it with more details. There is no news reported in the U.S. on the matter. The difference of the Nikkei Shinbun's article is that it names names. President Obama and Secretary of State Hillary Clinton. It's hard for me to believe that this president has time for trivial matters like actually governing the affairs inside and outside the U.S. in the election year. He must be very busy right now preparing for the big debate, which happened last Wednesday. But that's what Nikkei Shinbun wants us to believe. The article also mentions Secretary of State Clinton pressuring the Noda administration officials by strongly indicating it was the wish of the President Obama and the U.S. Congress that Japan scrap that silly nuclear energy policy. And then one added twist, the Nikkei article has disappeared.
What? I do want to remind listeners that we talked about that several weeks ago. We had a lot of news articles about how the Japanese were protesting and that the government had come up with plans to just get nuclear power off the table there.
They took down all the reactors offline. And apparently now it's been revealed that the United States government was strongly urging the Japanese government to reconsider its policy of zero nukes, which was part of the energy and environmental strategy of the Noda administration. It's just kind of, I guess they look, you can't blame the Japanese people. I honestly don't know what they're going to do for power. I mean, they're like the fourth largest economy in the world, and a lot of their stuff's made off Japan. They only make certain things in Japan itself, but nuclear power is what these guys have been running on. They're highly dependent upon it. So taking these things offline, this is going to be interesting to see how this affects their economy. But you can't blame these people.
Oh, not at all.
They're stuck on an island with all these nuclear power plants. If one more they just lost northern Japan, basically. Northern Japan's gone, and this article is saying how they're not doing any testing of the seafood that we're buying by the FDA from Japan.
That's crazy.
Well, yeah, the tuna, LA Times reported, I can't remember exactly, that the tuna that sailed over here, took a cruise liner, the tuna that swam over here from Japan, we're contaminated with radiation. I'm kind of off tuna right now. I'm going with wild caught salmon, but
you have to have a Geiger counter.
It was actually the large fin tuna. That's what happened. It was a bioaccumulative effect of them, eating the fish that ate the
higher
stuff.
fat content in the fish. Any ocean fish is going to have a higher fat.
The bigger the fish, the bigger the accumulation.
Of course, because it's cold in the ocean. That's why they have it.
I guess so. It is cold, isn't it? Unless you're in the warm waters.
I think it's like 40 degrees most of the winter. It's pretty cold. I don't think the ocean.
That's cold.
Yeah, I don't think the ocean gets much above 50. I know the people that were in the water for the Titanic, the water was around 50 or below.
Yeah, there's no swimming away from that one, is there?
No, but that's why some of the people are actually able to survive. It almost put them in a status because they were so cold. Preserved them.
I heard about a boy once who drowned in extremely cold water, and 30 minutes later they were able to revive him because his brain had slowed and the oxygen.
That happened here. That happened in a pond here like 2 years ago. I do recall that story.
Oh, maybe that was
it happens periodically in Wisconsin because, of course, we go out on the ice in the winter to go fishing for some reason. But yeah, little kids all the time. Do we want to move forward?
Yeah.
Let's talk. We like to give people a view of things to come and try to alert them to different stories so that they can kind of see what we're tracking and where our thinking is coming from. And I was looking through the Irish Times again, and I wanted to just let people know what the central bank there is talking about, because they are, of course, directly influenced by what Germany has just done, what the European Union does, the bailout for Greece. So Ireland's economic growth will slow this year, the central bank said, as it slightly revised down its earlier forecast. The bank suggested the government could accelerate the pace of its austerity program to eliminate the uncertainty that has plagued the economy. Without increasing the overall scale of fiscal correction, there is cause for getting the adjustment over more quickly, the report said. And Michael, that raises an interesting point. This is something that you and I have talked about, debt dumping, and how they're going to have to give up and just say, this isn't real, we're taking this off the books. It looks like the Central Bank of Ireland is kind of already recognizing that there has to be a radical correction to account for the inflation and the lack of value in some of these things.
Well, they would have to at some point the chickens come home to roost.
Right.
The comes out in the laundry. I don't know.
Exactly. So let me read the sentence again now with that little explanation. Without increasing the overall scale of fiscal correction, and that's what they're calling it, there is a case for getting the adjustment over more quickly, the report said. This would shorten the already lengthy period of uncertainty, which has been bad in itself and has doubtlessly slowed investment in other spending plans. This is exactly what you and I had been discussing at one point about how countries are going to make these adjustments and basically, try to reboot their economies in a more fiscally sound manner.
Well, right now, what's happening in America, we're doing a similar thing. We're not wiping the debt away completely. We're shuffling it over to the taxpayers. Here's how that works. They have a security-backed mortgage that has and toxic derivatives interlaced with investment funds. The government's been, by bailing out these banks, they're clearing these toxic assets from their sheets at the tune of $40 billion a month to the taxpayers. But that doesn't go away.
And it doesn't help us at all.
That debt comes back, $40 billion a month. They add to the $15 deficit is just the tip of the iceberg in this country.
Well, let me finish. Let's see. In its bulletin for the fourth quarter of this year, the bank said real gross domestic product would grow by 0.5%, lower than the 0.7% predicted in the third quarter. Gross national product, natural or not, which excludes the impact of multinationals on the economy, would shrink by 0.4%, slightly less than the 0.3% contraction predicted in the last quarter. The central bank attributed this revision to a less favorable outlook for the external demand. This reflects a more protracted than expected slowdown in virtually all of Ireland's main trading partners, which seems likely to extend into the first half of 2013, the report said. It sounds like we've got some kind of smarter thinking going on, some accountability and some clarity in what they're saying. So a similar revision was applied to forecast for next year, with the pickup of GDP growth expected to reach 1.7% and the GNP to expand by a modest 0.7%. That compares with the growth of 1.9% and 0.9% respectively in the last bulletin. The bank said the growth was dependent on some recovery in external demand and stabilization of the domestic economy. Although domestic demand is set to shrink further this year, the pace of decline is expected to slow, and next year is expected to see stabilization. That's good news, I think, ultimately.
Well,
it's a slowdown. It's a recognition, a little bit more responsibility, and the look on the vista of a slow recovery, but definitely an upward growth.
Oh, unfortunately, I think that's just silly propaganda. There's no recovery and there's no upward growth. Because let me ask you this. I mean, seriously, where would the growth come from? You've lost 56,000 manufacturing facilities since 2001. If our economy is doing so great and we were recovering like they lied before, remember, we were in a recovery. The recession's over. Remember?
Yes, but we are talking about Ireland.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you were talking about
America.
No,
No, I'm sorry. This is Ireland.
Okay. I'm sorry.
Because the U.S. would never come across with this kind of thinking and these kind of accurate numbers.
Unfortunately, Ireland, if they can detach themselves, now that I know what topic we're talking about.
I'm sorry.
No, don't apologize, because I should have been, my head's just a whirl here. But if Ireland pulls out of the euro, goes back to its national currency, does what it has to get rid of its problems, yes, they stand a chance of remaining solvent. Iceland did this. They got away with it. It's not that they got away with it. They were right in doing this. Basically, Iceland's approach was they said, look, this isn't our debt. They pulled back. They did what they had to. And, yes, they are alive today because of it.
I want to read this last statement because I think it's worth reading. Just to wrap this article up, the decline in investment is also likely to be moderate significantly in 2012 and may grow next year. The bank said it would be next year before any employment growth starts to emerge. Stipu reacted angrily to the bank's call for a further cut in labor costs, stating, "The problem with our economy is not that wages or spending is too high," said Union President Jack O'Connor. "It is that consumer demand continues to fall through the floorboards precisely as a result of the pursuit of this nonsensical approach, which reflects an ongoing attempt to resolve the problems created by those at the top of society through crucifying people on middle and low incomes." I love it.
Exactly the way it's done.
And that was said by Union President Jack O'Connor. You know, they may not have a very big island, but they sure have a lot of good people that are trying to make sense of things and at least call it as it is. I appreciate that.
Sure, and they're small enough, like Iceland, where they can maybe get away with that. The next one to watch is Spain. That's where all the eyes are tuned to. If Spain goes down, it's going to cause a problem that'll reach deeper into the Eurozone debt crisis. So Ireland is actually kind of off the hook for the moment.
Well, but they're planning.
They would get pulled down, though, with it. I mean, that's the sad part about it is they're part of the Eurozone now.
Yeah, and you know, I've been looking through the headlines, trying to find information on what's going on with Greece, what's going on with Italy, how this has progressed, because it's been relatively quiet for the last 2 weeks. I found one headline here: Merkel planning Greek visit, show of support. As Prime Minister says, Greece can only last until November without aid. But basically, you know, she's going over there to visit them, and that's the only story I have found.
Regarding the Euro...
regarding the fact that they approved the additional bailout money for Greece, the fact that we're still looking at Italy and Portugal having problems here, and all of a sudden the news, you can't find it. It's what happened?
What I do is I type in the Google search bar for news, Euro debt crisis.
Okay.
And that's where, right, if you don't see it in your main headlines, you can just search by subject this way. And they've got plenty. Key ECB, the European Central Bank steps to combat Europe's debt crisis. They got Debt Crisis Live. Spain's top agenda for Eurozone Permanent Bailout Fund.
Interesting. This lists a couple related articles. EU and IMF press Greece to clarify austerity plan. Greece to submit draft of budget. EU mulls bond insurance for Spain. Time for Europe to end cruel nonsense of austerity. And then Spain's central bank chief says budget projections are overly optimistic. You and I talked about this, the fact that all these countries want to claim poverty. They want to claim that they're suffering inflation, that the value of their money has declined, but they can't all do it at once.
Well, and their economy is suffering because every time they take a loan from the IMF or the European Central Bank, it's not fixing the problem. It's going to pay off interest rates and other payments that have nothing to do with actually stimulating the economy.
So is this kind of more like a or hot potato, I should say, where, you know, let's pass it to Spain, let's pass it to Portugal, let's pass it to Ireland. I mean, is that kind of what's going? This is a hot potato that keeps getting passed?
Actually, you know, now that you mentioned it, on breakingdownthenews.com, I have a website, breakingdownthenews.com, for the show here. And one of the articles, actually, Financial Wealth Evaporating, it's listed under World News here. This article might answer your question. Live by the sword, die by the sword. The 1% have spent the past couple of decades accumulating an ever bigger share of the world's fiat currency inflated financial assets. Now with the air going out of the fire, finance, insurance, and real estate economy, the super rich are discovering that their stocks and bonds, like the paper money on which they're based, are to a large extent illusory. World's richest lose $24 billion as Adelson fortune drops. The world's richest people lost a combined $24.4 billion this week. Well,
wow, that's half of the $40 billion a month that the feds are talking about.
As concerns over Spain's rising borrowing costs and the sputtering American job market caused global markets to tumble, casino mogul Sheldon Adelson lost $2.2 billion. Shares of his I know, and it's kind of like, you know.
I'm sorry, I don't mean to laugh, but I can't have sympathy for this man.
Right, we'll never even see like a fraction of $1 billion in our lifetime. But
So basically, what you're saying is all this fiat money, all this phony paper, or this useless paper, is actually starting to impact the piles and stacks of money that the rich, the super rich, and the ultra rich are.
Well, even those super. Okay, there's 3 classes. Let's just break it down for simplicity's sake. You have a super elite wealthy that has a combined trillions of dollars in wealth.
Okay.
Then you have billionaires and millionaires below them. And sort of like, what would be the actual middle class if you really broke this down?
And how many trillionaires do you think are out there? We're not talking about like Paul McCarthy people or Michael Jackson's original.
No, trillionaires are Rothschilds, Rockefellers, Morgans, Queen Beatrice. No.
Bill Gates isn't even up there.
Bill Gates is like a low-level manager. That's what's crazy. Like, we always go, oh, the richest man in the world. No, he's not. He's really not. Warren Buffett or these guys.
What about Richard Branson?
How much is he worth?
He must be worth a lot. He owns Virgin Mobile, Virgin Air, Virgin Records. I mean, the man is a self-made...
There are, I mean, not to counter.
I mean, he's going to Mars. He's got enough money to go to Mars.
I don't know if I've never heard his name, but honestly, that wealth, like even if you have $100 billion, that's nothing compared to those who have multiple trillions of dollars. And it's families that hold this wealth.
That's the virtue of it, isn't it? Families.
Not single family, and not single members or single
generations. You're talking about
dynasties.
These dynasties.
Whether it's a Chinese dynasty, whether it's an American or English dynasty, Anglo-American dynasty, same difference. European dynasty. So yes, there's a huge difference. These guys, they're gobbling up the wealth from the millionaires and the billionaires and pulling it in, and you know clearly the middle class is getting sucked in this too. It's actually wealth coalescence. Is that the right words? Okay, in other words, we're being robbed globally through a very elaborate scam. The way, for instance, that American citizens are being robbed, if they came up to you with the gun and said, give me your money, you'd object. But when they spend it to bail out banks that were reckless and then hand you the bill, that's another way of stealing it from you. When they raise when inflation through bad fiscal policies brought up, that's another way they're stealing from you because you're making the same amount of money at your job. So currencies going up and down are kind of relative. When you're at a fixed rate of income, wouldn't it be nice to have an adjustable income?
Yeah, one that adjusted to inflation. They're supposed to. People are supposed to get inflation adjustments and bumps up, but cost of living increase, they call it.
And all the supposed tos are when it's left like that. You know, there's nobody really fighting for our costs. Just look at that debate that they went over last Wednesday. The real issues weren't discussed. Peripheral issues were discussed. Superficial issues were discussed. But the heart and core of these matters, not even touched upon. So, I don't know. Is this a case where we get what we deserve? It's.
I think that's a little rough. Don't you really? I mean, there's a lot of innocent people out there who just don't understand.
That is true. That is true. But if it wasn't for our complicity, if it wasn't for our acquiescence to this tyranny, this isn't just a robbery in place. It's a massive psyops being done on us where we don't want to talk about real issues anymore. So therefore, and we've got a government setting up where we can't even petition grievances anymore.
Right.
What's the end result of all that? I mean, in the end, basically, it's shut up. We got the guns. You have the right to shut up and
do what we say.
Do what we say, and that's your only right.
Eat what we serve you and pay us.
Do you remember the movie A Bug's Life?
Yes, actually, I do.
Okay, and what they said, the grasshopper said, if the ants ever figured out that they outnumber us like 1,000,000 to 1, we're done for.
Yeah.
If they understand that if any one of them, a small faction of them, would stand up against us, we're done for. And that's why when I made that harsh statement, we get what we deserve. honestly, this was something that we needed to stand up against. And it's as simple as the grasshoppers are running us. We could easily take back power peacefully by voting them out and putting our own leaders in. I'm not saying the corporate elite are going to give up their power so readily, but again, vote with your dollars and you take out their steam.
I was going to say, because I just don't have that much confidence in voting anymore. With DeBolt trying to get the contract to do electronic voting
In America, it's
and
just
not able to
embarrassing.
produce a receipt when you vote, and they do all the gas.
Well, they want digital cash, digital voting, digital everything, so that nothing can ever be tracked or verified again. And truth is what they tell you it is.
But they can verify what you voted for if they can identify you like that.
Well, right. And if you have paper ballots, you can recount those ballots. That didn't help us much against Gore and Bush in Florida. Not that I was for Gore, but I mean, he totally rolled over on that thing. That was clearly a rigged election.
Yeah, and I don't know why he rolled, but obviously there were reasons why he did. It's a shame.
A deal was made.
I guess.
He was pretty happy. I mean, this was a while ago, but boy, that was 8 years ago. But I remember Gore.
Still bitter.
We're more bitter over his lost election than he was.
I know, and that makes me question, makes me ponder.
This is what I mean, though, too. I mean, look, if we're going to continue believing that the system's real, that's kind of like our fault. Nobody's forcing us to believe this stuff. I mean, yes, we are under chemical attack, a psychological attack. The TV and media is literally programming us. And we've been bred now for decades to be a Slavic decadent society that doesn't concern itself with anything but its own entertainment. And,
which is a shame.
Well, it's not only a shame, but I mean, crap, we're at the 6 o'clock hour, and I don't know where Eric Green is. He's supposed to be...
is it Eric or is it Ingrid that comes in for inspirational hour?
Oh, no, right. Yeah, that's right. Ingrid's inspirational hour. She usually calls, too, if she's going to be late. And
Yeah.
I usually announce.
I wonder if maybe the dark, gloomy atmosphere is bringing her down.
You know, actually, I think it did for everybody. It's not like this all over the nation today. Apparently, it's still warm in New York, but... yeah, this cold weather, it's the time of the year.
Still warm in St. Louis, and that's only 385 miles south of us.
Yeah, well, I would hope it was warm.
It's always warm in St. Louis. It's a real armpit.
Is it?
That's my personal opinion.
Yeah, but you're right. It's not that far south.
365 miles. I want to say it's probably about 4 or 5 lines of longitude, latitude, if it's even that.
All right, well, Caitlin, I was going to pull out of the show unless you have anything to add.
No, I would encourage people to check the mkefilm.org site to enjoy the Milwaukee Film Festival while it's here. We're quite well known across the country for our open forums with film festivals and anime festivals. So come and enjoy something that's unique and particular to this city. You know, get informed, read, go to these documentaries, see people have put years of research, months and months of research, hours, hundreds of hours to bring this information to you. So go be entertained and get some information and learn what's going on. Learn what Michael and I are trying to inform you of and make your own decisions.
Well said. Well, this has been October 5th, 2012 edition of Breaking Down the News. I'm Michael Wordsworth.
This is Caitlin Redding.
And we wish you a good Friday evening. Good night, America.